State have available its next witness?
Yes.
All right, we'll bring the jury out.
All right, next witness. Let me get my notes.
Subject matter jurisdiction, Your Honor. Still have yet to be verified.
Your objection's noted.
Was my ICF obtained by clerk of courts?
The one requesting the copies of various documents?
The one asking for the complaints.
Yes, my understanding is they're working on it.
Just wanted that clear for the record.
Just one or two ICF forms on that?
I sent one.
Okay. It was sent to me twice, and I just wanted to make sure it was only one. It appeared to be the same thing, but...
Is it in the queue, Your Honor? It's in the case.
It should be.
Thank you.
All rise.
You can tell he's sitting here trying to still figure out something else to ask her, just to like annoy her a little bit more. Let me get my notes open. I forgot to jot down Exhibit 55. I don't know what that is. That one is. Probably some parade footage.
All right, thank you, everyone. Please be seated.
All right, let's see who this
State
is.
may call its next witness.
State calls Master Trooper Mike Smith.
Wait, what did he say? I think I heard.
Trooper Smith, when you get to the witness stand, which is to my right, up one riser, if you would please remain standing, raise your right hand, and my clerk, Teresa, will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Have a seat. Madam Clerk, I'm giving you previously received 54. Right, sir, the first thing I will have you do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
First name is Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L. Last name is Smith, S-M-I-T-H.
Thank you. Go ahead, your witness.
Thank you. How are you employed?
With the Wisconsin State Patrol.
What's your job title?
I am a reconstructionist with the Technical Reconstruction Unit.
How long have you had that position?
I joined the TRU when it was originally formed in 2008. I've been doing full-time recon since 2002. We had a unit formed based on the need for a reconstructionist that did this type of crash investigation all the time. That's all we do. A normal trooper has traffic enforcement duties. We just have strictly crash recon duties. That's all we do.
How long have you worked for State Patrol?
I was hired in 2000.
Can you describe for us
That's
your
a long time.
educational background?
Yes, I have a 2-year associate's degree in criminal justice, and then multiple training in the crash reconstruction field through the State Patrol.
So I'd like to get into that a little bit. Can you tell us what kind of training was required to become a reconstructionist for the State Patrol?
Yes, I've had over about 2,000 hours of training. That training has been done at our State Patrol Academy. We bring in schools like Northwestern, Texas A&M, IPTM, which stands for the Institute of Police Technology and Management. They come in, they're college-level courses. They teach us, obviously, over a series of weeks. We also have specialty instructors come in for specialty fields in accident reconstruction, which can be vehicle versus pedestrian, vehicle versus motorcycle, CMB crashes, lighting studies, and a bunch of other ones.
How many accident or crash scene reconstruction analyses have you completed as a reconstructionist with the State Patrol?
Well, since about probably 2004, I would say till now, I average probably over 100 a year that I respond to. And these are serious crashes. They're not just, somebody driving into a mailbox. This is a criminal or possibly injury case involving criminal charges that we respond to. But probably on average over 100 a year.
So this is interesting. This is another witness that I'm glad they brought up to the stand. It's kind of similar, even though they don't do the same things, but it's kind of similar to the detective that they brought up. I want to say on day 4. That's just me guessing. I don't really remember, but it's similar to the detective that they brought up that did the assessment of his speed. So we pretty much know that Darrell is just going to try to discredit his training and then act as if, I mean, we know like he's going to pretend like he's being paid and all this stuff, but I'm pretty sure he's the only thing he really can do, you know, because he only has a few tricks up his sleeve. We've pretty much seen the full scope of what he has to offer here. So he's just going to try to get like information about how long he was trained and, you know, why that's not, I guess, sufficient to work on his case. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to try to do.
For the last.
Or what he's going to try to say.
2004.
Did you conduct a crash reconstruction analysis in downtown Waukesha from an event that took place on November 21st, 2021?
I did.
When did you begin your work on that analysis?
I worked with detectives from the City of Waukesha Police Department. On January 30th of this year, we actually went out to the scene to conduct a time distance analysis.
Where did you go at the scene?
We went to the Curry Insurance Company, which was the cameras that we decided to use after viewing all the videos. That was the best, as far as what I'm concerned, to use in a time distance analysis. It was the clearest. It provided certain things that made it necessary for me to do an accurate time distance analysis.
So maybe this is, I'm sorry I'm cutting it, like I'm pausing a lot here, but maybe this is one of the people that the detective referenced, because he mentioned that he couldn't finish his like assessment of the speed until someone was finished with something. Like, I'm not sure if this is who he was talking about here, if he was talking about the state trooper here or who he mentioned. Like, oh man, now I want to go back to see if I can connect the dots on that, because if he did say it, then that's, I don't know why it makes it more interesting to me, but it kind of does.
What are some of those certain things he referenced?
What we look for and what we've been trained to do is, first of all, we look for a stationary camera when it doesn't move. This is why I take notes. So when we are viewing the video of the incident and we are, again, recording new video with the time distance analysis, that camera is in the same exact spot. That's the first thing we do. Secondly, we want to have at least 2 fixed reference points to actually see where a vehicle in this case is entering the first reference point and where it hits the second reference point. So those need to be really clear for us to get an accurate distance. And from that point, then we want to actually time or make sure the timing on the video software is accurate. And that's simply a stopwatch that we use to verify that that video is timing correctly, not too fast, not too slow. So once we have all that done and we determine those 2 points, we will bring a vehicle in, and in this case an exemplar vehicle that matched the description, I think your make and model of the vehicle that was in the parade. We actually will have someone, me in this case, inside watching the video on the screen, seeing when that exemplar vehicle comes into the screen. When it comes into the screen where the vehicle did at the time, we have somebody mark that location out on the roadway. We then do that for a second point further down. In this case, we had 2 points. Once we have those 2 points established, then we're bringing our survey equipment out, which is a Trimble unit that you've all seen them out on the roadways and then, you know, people's homes where they're surveying. That's what we use. Very accurate instrument. Just to give you an idea of accuracy, at about 300 feet, it's plus or minus 1/8 of an inch off. So very, very accurate unit, which we use all the time for crash reconstruction. So once we have that distance, we've...
That's not going to stop Darrell from trying to say that it's probably wrong.
Verified the timing. It's a pretty simple calculation that we do to determine a vehicle's average speed through that particular distance that we have. And just keep in mind it's an average speed, so it could be moving faster or slower during certain portions of the distance, but it's just basically taking that average speed through that distance that we measured.
When you used that Trimble machine to conduct your measurements, did you use those measurements to later produce a 2-scale scene diagram?
I did.
Okay, I'd like to project for the witness only exhibit number 56, please.
56?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, show the witness.
Do you recognize the diagram on the screen in front of you?
I do.
What is it?
That is the scale diagram that I created as a result of the Trimble measurements that I took out at the scene.
Remove Exhibit 56 into evidence and request permission to publish.
Objection. I can't see it on my screen.
He's right.
Who cares?
Oh, I don't know why. We'll need to check the cabling.
Who cares? The witness saw it.
I can see.
Sorry, I'm just gonna go back a little bit because, like,
I can't see it on my screen.
I'm just trying to get
The screen in front of you?
I do.
the
What is it?
description a little bit.
That is the scale diagram that I created as a result of the Trimble measurements that I took out at the scene.
Remove Exhibit 56 into evidence and request permission to publish.
Objection. I can't see it on my screen.
He's right.
Oh, I don't know why. We'll need to check the cabling. I can see it on mine.
What exhibit was that?
56.
Had a few technical difficulties in the courtroom today. I'm sure Darrell is gonna act like that's grounds for like a mistrial or something. I couldn't see the exhibit, so she let me out.
Let me know when it's on the screen in front of you, sir.
I see it.
All right. Continue then. Oh, and Exhibit 56. Well, first of all, let him review it. It's been offered by the state. You've now had an opportunity to review it, sir.
It takes that long to look at it?
All right, Exhibit 56 is received. Permission to publish is granted. Go ahead.
Okay, could you please walk us through what we're looking at here?
Yes, again, so this would be a diagram, two-dimensional orthogonal, so basically looking from the top down at the area that I did measure at the time we did the speed analysis. Obviously, it depicts a vehicle at a starting point and a vehicle at an end point. The vehicle at point A represents where that vehicle came into that east camera that was located at the Curry Insurance Company. And as soon as basically that vehicle, you're able to view it inside inside the insurance company with the representative was there, I basically told that vehicle to stop. We marked that location on the roadway, and then we continued down to the secondary point, which I determined was the crosswalk. And we marked at that point once the exemplar vehicle reached that. And that's how we got that distance of 141 feet, roughly 3 inches.
Okay. And what do you do with that distance once you have that measurement?
So once we have that measurement, that's one part of the equation that we need. The equation that we need, just really to explain it briefly, comes from Newton's laws of motion. Force equals mass times acceleration. It's part of Newton's second law. The formula that we use is velocity equals distance divided by time, and then we convert that velocity to speed. So we need two inputs in order to calculate the average speed of that vehicle over that distance. The first, obviously, is distance. The second is time. Now, how we get the time is we take the actual video from the incident, and we have a stopwatch, and we time it when it reaches those fixed points. And we do about 20 iterations, then we average those 20 iterations out to get a time, and that's the second part of the equation that we need in order to get that velocity or speed. Once we have that time, in this case it was 2.7 seconds, we round up and increase that time to the nearest whole number, which was 3.
Why do you round up? I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
That's fine. We round up always to give the benefit to the vehicle, because obviously the longer it takes to travel that distance, the slower the speed will be. So we always round up to the next number. If it was 2 seconds, we'd round up to 2.5. So it's about every half-second interval that we round up to. So now that we have the distance of 142 feet roughly and the time of 3 seconds, not 2.7, we came up with the speed of the vehicle, or average speed of the vehicle during that segment of 32 miles an hour.
32 miles an hour as an average speed from point A to point B as they're depicted on this diagram?
Correct.
Way too fast for parade.
Sustained is to the form of the question. Please rephrase. The
I
jury
didn't
will
hear him
disregard
object,
the
though.
last answer.
Could you please explain for us, again, summarizing what average speed you calculated and over what distance?
Yes. So the average speed, very simple. We marked point A, we marked point B, we had that distance, we had that time. The vehicle speed between point A, or the average vehicle speed, let me reiterate, was 32 miles an hour between point A and point B.
You mentioned an exemplar vehicle earlier. Can you maybe explain for us again the purpose of using an exemplar vehicle in your analysis?
Well, when I worked with the detectives from the City of Waukesha PD, we wanted to find an exemplar vehicle just due to the type of case this was. They were able to easily locate one that was very convenient to use, matching the description, I believe the year, make, and model of the car that was in the actual parade. So we decided to use that. Realistically, you can use any type of vehicle because you're just basically looking for that object coming into that frame of reference. But just for court purposes, I think it's a little bit easier to, show the jury that, hey, we used a vehicle that was similar or the same.
Right.
And in terms of this case, you used a 2010 red Ford Escape?
Correct.
Okay. Do you happen to know the curb weight of that vehicle?
Yeah.
Overruled. You may answer.
So explaining what curb weight is really
He
quick.
objects so
That's
quietly,
the
I
weight
don't
of
even
the
hear
vehicle as
him.
it comes off the assembly line. So it doesn't include fuel, it doesn't include any personal items, it's just right off the assembly line. This particular 4x2 vehicle was 3,368 pounds curb weight.
Okay. And to clarify, does curb weight have anything to do with your speed, average speed analysis?
It does not.
Okay. When you get to the end result of your speed analysis and you have that number, the average speed over that distance, does somebody check your work?
Yes, absolutely. Part of our protocol in the TRU is we have to have all of our reports peer reviewed. Has to be done. Every single one goes out to a former member of the TRU who is now a consultant for us. He peer reviews it, makes sure that everything is correct.
Okay, I want to wrap up by just asking you some clarifying questions about
Darrell will
the nature
probably
of
ask some
what
questions
an
about
average
that.
speed means. Can you say definitively that at any point between point A and point B, the vehicle was traveling faster than 32 miles an hour?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Rounds.
So average speed is calculated, as we talked about, through that distance. The vehicle can either be going faster than 32 or slower than 32 over that distance. But it's an average. Is it possible the vehicle maintained a constant speed of 32? Yes. But it's more plausible that you have higher and lower speeds during that segment.
Okay. That's all I have for this witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Cross.
That was in depth stuff.
Yes.
What can he even ask him? What can you ask?
This is kind of distraction still being on there. From your testimony, it seems like you've been doing crash reconstructions from quite some time. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Around 2004, I believe you said?
I was in the program from about 2002, but really started getting into full recons about 2004. You need a little bit of training first before you can actually go out and be on your own.
You stated that you worked with detectives in the process. Do you recall who that was?
Yeah, that was Detective Casey.
Casey. Okay.
On getting the calculation of the speed, did you work with anyone on that side of your investigation?
No.
So it was pretty much just you and the detectives.
The detective did not assist me with the speed calculation. He just assisted me with obtaining the videos and also assisted me, excuse me, out at the scene where we did the testing.
I think the exhibit showed the building that had the camera. Do you recall which streets that were along the parade route?
Yeah, that was in front of Curia Insurance on Main Street.
And the point A and point B, did those start from a cross street, or was it just the main?
The insurance company has cameras outside by the sidewalk. There's 2 of them. There's one towards the east and one towards the west, right at the front of the building.
You made reference to the distance traveled in feet.
Correct.
I think it was 141.
Correct. 141 feet 2 inches, a little bit over that.
And you made a reference to the average speed. Any reason why the average speed wasn't depicted in the exhibit?
That's just a calculation that we do that's included in the report. I don't normally do that in the diagram.
So it would be fair to say that you created the diagram?
I did create the diagram, yes.
You said normally you don't put the speed calculation in the diagram. Would it be any reason for that?
It's in the report. It's not necessary to put it in the diagram.
Have you ever done that before?
Could you rephrase the question?
Have you ever not included the speed analysis in any crash reconstructions that you've done before this one?
Are you referring to the diagram, or are you referring to the report?
Referring to the diagrams.
No, I don't. I do not put speed calculation results in diagrams.
On any of them?
On any of them.
Did you create any diagram with the speed calculations present on it?
No, I don't. The diagram that I created is the one that was up on the screen.
And then from there, you put the speed calculations just in the report.
Yeah, I normally just put them in the report, yes. I don't have any recollection of putting one in the diagram.
How many times is he going to ask the same question? Okay. The same question about 4 times.
Would it be fair to say that it may be a little bit difficult to locate what you analyze for speed if it's not in the diagram?
No.
So if you wanted to know the calculation of the speed, you would have to read the report.
Correct.
Would it be fair to say that it might be easier to find if it was included in the diagram?
My diagram is included with my report, and that's all one unit, so it is in the report.
So now he's arguing about the convenience of the report. Is that... Wow, that's a great point that's going to get you... it's going to make you innocent, huh? The lack of convenience of the diagram. The speed analysis was not on the diagram, therefore, he should go free.
Can you explain what the S6 is?
Yes, the S6 is the name of the Trimble robotic total station that we use to actually measure things at crash scenes.
So that's like a certain technology or something, would that be fair to say?
It's a piece of surveying equipment that if you've been on the road, you've seen them where they're measuring the roadways, or if somebody's building a home. Same type of equipment, we just use it for crash reconstruction.
And what is a prism? Is that in direct relation to the electronic distance measuring system?
Correct. The total station is one part of the equipment that we use. The prism is the other. The total station communicates with the prism through an electronic digital measuring system, which is a laser. The two pieces are needed, in this case, to collect the measurements that I collected. Not a necessary component to using the equipment, but we normally do use the prism when taking measurements.
And that prism's pretty accurate, you would say.
Well, the unit is accurate.
What about the prism?
Yeah, it's all accurate. The unit itself is very accurate. At 300 feet, it's about 1/8 of an inch either way, plus or minus.
Darrell has no idea what to ask this dude to like try to make things.
And is the CAD the diagram that you created?
Could you rephrase the question, please?
Is the CAD is that software related to the diagram that you created?
It is.
In what way?
The computer-aided design software program that we use is a tool that when we transfer the measurements from the Trimble total station, we transfer that into the computer-aided design program, and that's how we create our diagram.
He's reading this stuff off of these notes, this public defenders, and doesn't know why he's asking them. Let's get the sovereign citizen stuff going, man. You have no idea what to say to this guy.
Can you explain what the 2.4 gigahertz radio technology is?
That's just software that's built into the total station, the Trimble unit, as part of its communication.
And is that communication radio?
Yeah, there's a radio inside the unit, correct.
You made reference to something called Newton's Law. Can you explain a little bit further what that is?
Newton's laws of motion are what we use as a big step in our reconstruction field. A lot of formulas are derived from Newton's laws, including the formula that we use to calculate the vehicle's average speed. Sir Isaac Newton obviously invented the laws of motion. We all learned that in high school, and that's part of the process that came to the formula that I use to calculate the average speed.
I always thought of Newton as gravity, so that was a bit of
Oh God, he's trying to have a friendly moment with somebody. He wants a friend so bad.
You made reference to part of the crash reconstruction was finding a similar vehicle. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And you were able to find a similar vehicle pretty easily, you would say?
That would have been the City of Waukesha Police Department, which found the vehicle.
And you made reference to it being in the parade as well? Or part of the parade as well?
The exemplar vehicle?
Yes, the vehicle that was similar.
The exemplar vehicle was not in the parade.
I may have misinterpreted what you were saying. And you said it was found by the Waukesha Police Department.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall if that part of your investigation and the creating of the graph and all that technology that goes with that, was that part of the same day, or were they done on at different times?
I'm sorry, are you referencing the diagram, the creation of the diagram?
Right.
No, that was
Because
not.
it seems like a lot of technology went into getting the diagram created and, you know, different variations of that. And then also using a similar vehicle to, I guess, simulate would that be fair to say, simulate the incident?
We used the exemplar vehicle for our testing.
Was that done all the same day, or was it done?
Sorry, could you rephrase the question again? I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Was the creation of the diagram and the simulation of the vehicle done on the same day?
No, it was not.
So it'd be fair to say it was a process involved in getting all the information.
Correct.
And you stated that that was done around January 30th, around that time?
The testing was done on January 30th.
And what about the simulation from the similar vehicle?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Do you recall what date the simulation was performed?
All right, are you asking when I completed my analysis?
Specifically the part of the similar vehicle being used.
That was January 30th. We did the testing out on Main Street in front of Curry Insurance.
You know what I'm just now realizing? Like, I'm not sure how long he's been going now. It feels like maybe 10 minutes or so. He hasn't yet, like, asked anything that's poked any sort of holes in this trooper's, like, testimony. Like, it seems more like he's genuinely just trying to learn about the process, and, like, it just seems like he's kind of curious about the process that went into this, because none of these questions, he's not like bringing up an argument when it comes to it. He's just like asking about it, you know, like, how did this happen or that, like. So I guess like he's in autopilot and is literally just reading off of the paper, but doesn't know how to follow up with like an actual question that may potentially bring up like some inconsistencies in what he said, which, like, this dude's testimony is airtight, so he really can't say anything. But even still, like, he's not even trying right now. There's
so what
no
part
effort.
of the process was done at a later date?
The diagram, the calculations, the time distance analysis.
This is comedy. He's really reading this. We have to wait until he reads the questions.
The date of the second part of the investigation?
Are you referring to when I completed my reports?
Yes.
No, I don't know what day that was.
Was it sometime after the January 30th date?
Correct.
Would you say there was a delay in finishing it, or did something cause you to kind of... Let me rephrase that. Was there anything that may have delayed you finishing the investigation quickly?
Can you rephrase? What do you mean by quickly?
Darrell is
by,
really struggling with this
it
one.
seems like there was two parts of it, getting the simulation done and then the actual diagram and things of that. Any reason why that couldn't be done closer together?
Well, first of all, it's not a simulation because a simulation is different than what we did. This was just some testing we did out at the scene. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, I respond to hundreds of crashes. It depends on what I'm working on at the time. Once our reports are completed, they need to be peer reviewed. All that process takes time. So there's nothing that delayed my report. If you want to use me going to another crash, that possibly could have delayed it, but no delays that would affect the outcome of the report or the accuracy of the report.
No, I wasn't going to that part of it. I was just kind of curious to what may have spaced out the dates. That's what I was really getting at.
We do a lot of reports every year, and obviously we're not just doing one report a year. So every report is different. Every report requires different types of analysis. So there's really no set time on when we can finish a report compared to when we started. It just depends on what else is going on outside of our time in the office.
This has been a struggle cross-exam. This whole thing has been a struggle right now. Fisher Price and maximum effect, not even full. It's a step above.
No further questions.
Any
Oh wow,
redirect?
no sovereign citizen stuff.
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down.
Okay. What are you looking at?
You may. Statement called. Next witness.
It's going to call Dr.
think he-
Amy Shield.
I didn't catch the name. He might have just now realized he didn't ask his sovereign citizen stuff. I don't know. But let's see who the next witness is. And I do want to take the time to say thank you so much to Sarah Dowling. I hope I'm saying your last name right. I've been butchering names a little bit lately, so I'm sorry if I'm not saying it right. But thank you so much for the donation. Actually, I want to get it right how much you donated because I don't want to be rude. Oh boy, it's not showing me.
All right, good afternoon, Dr. Shield. If you would please make your way to the witness stand, which is to my right, up one riser. When you get there, please remain standing. Raise your right hand, and my clerk, Teresa, who's on my left, will swear you in.
Okay. I'm going to finish that, I promise. But let me see who the name of this witness is that they've called.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. First thing I will ask you to do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each, please.
Amy Shield, AMYSHEIL.
Thank you. Go ahead, your witness.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Shield. How are you currently employed?
I'm an associate medical examiner at the Waukesha County Medical Examiner's Office.
How long have you been with the medical examiner's office?
About 7.5 years.
What are your duties at the medical examiner's office?
My primary function is to determine cause and manner of death, and in order to do that, I often perform autopsies or external examinations, send out laboratory tests, interpret the results of those tests, compile all this information into a report, and then certify a death certificate.
And is that report, what is that report called?
An autopsy protocol or autopsy report.
I could see Darrell possibly getting really disrespectful in this cross-exam. Just thinking of the type of questions he could ask, you know. when it comes to like the cause of death, him trying to say that, how do you know this for sure, or something like that. I could see him getting super
Can you
disrespectful
briefly
in this.
describe to the jury the schooling and training you went through to become an associate medical examiner?
Yes, I earned my Doctor of Medicine degree from Creighton University in Nebraska in 2003. And then I completed a pathology residency in South Carolina. That is anatomic and clinical pathology. And then I did a 1-year forensic pathology fellowship, which concerns how disease and injury cause death. Then I practiced for about a year as a forensic pathologist in South Carolina. And then I did an additional year of training in pediatric pathology, which is the study of diseases and conditions in infants and children. I worked in pediatric pathology in an academic setting for about 5 years before coming to Waukesha County.
I'm going to direct your attention to approximately November 22nd of 2021. Did you perform an external examination of an individual identified as Leanna Owen?
Yes.
I did give you 3 exhibits when you walked into court, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm going to direct your attention to exhibit number 62. Do you see that in front of you?
Yes.
Is that the autopsy protocol for Leanna Owen?
Yes.
And can you just state for the record how many pages that autopsy protocol consists of?
It's not on the screen.
And it's not going to be on the screen.
Under previously provided to Mr. Brooks.
Yes.
Do you have any additional copies today? Any chance?
I do not. We can make some.
You don't have that in your materials, sir? Do you have the autopsy protocol in your materials?
No.
You can provide that to Madam Clerk and we can make copies as well.
So was he requesting that to be like displayed to everyone, or I guess he's just requesting it for it to be displayed to him, but
Was it intended for me to have or not to have? Just so I'm clear.
I can't answer that.
These autopsy protocols were previously provided to the defense.
All right, we'll still make copies.
clearly it wasn't intended for you to have, so I don't even know why he had to ask that question. Exhibit 62.
Go ahead, yeah.
I
You're
said,
gonna run next door and copy them, and you can continue since we're on the first exhibit. Do you have exhibit 62, sir?
It would be the autopsy protocol for Leanna Owen.
I accept for value in return for value these documents shown.
The record to reflect that the defendant has a copy of exhibit 62. Please continue, Attorney Crazy.
Ma'am, what did you do in this case in terms of examinations of Ms. Owen?
On November,
Generally speaking, I'm sorry.
okay, on November 22nd, I performed her external examination, which involves documentation of all her clothing and jewelry, her identifying features such as stature, body weight, hair color, eye color, any scars, tattoos, and then we proceed with documentation of injuries.
And did you also create a summary of the injuries that you located on Ms. Owen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show for you on the screen in front of you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 163. If you can tell me when you can see that on the screen in front of you. And I did provide Mr. Brooks a copy of both the autopsy protocol as well as the diagram that's going to show on the screen.
Consent to being called that name, Your Honor, for the record.
I knew that was coming.
Ma'am, do you see? Is it showing up in front of your screen? And Exhibit 163, is that the diagram that you prepared to summarize your findings in the autopsy protocol for Leanna Owen?
Yes.
And does it accurately depict the injuries that are notated or described in the autopsy protocol?
Yes.
I would ask the court to accept Exhibit 62 and 163 into evidence.
Objection.
The objection to both, each objection is noted. They're overruled. Exhibits 62 and 163 are both received. Permission to publish are, I believe only 163 is what you asked me for, is granted.
Yeah, it was only one asked for.
Permission to publish 163, that's what I said.
Thank you. Ma'am, can you briefly describe what this document, Exhibit 163, portrays?
This diagram depicts Leanna Owen's injuries. The red represents open wounds, lacerations or abrasions, which are scrapes to the skin. Blue is for bruising or contusions. Black is internal injuries or skeletal fractures.
And in performing the autopsy procedure on Miss Owen, what was the cause of her death?
Multiple blunt force traumatic injuries.
Specifically for the injuries that she sustained, can you describe the fatal injuries for the jury?
Objection, leading witness.
Overruled. She may answer.
Leanna Owen had injuries to her head, spine, torso, and viscera, or her internal organs. The combination of all these injuries led to her death, but she did sustain isolated injuries to her upper cervical spine, or her neck spine, and aortic lacerations. The aorta is the largest artery in the body. That would have been fatal within seconds to a couple of minutes.
And would all those injuries be consistent with being struck by a moving SUV weighing approximately 3,300 pounds?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm next going to direct your attention to, did you perform an autopsy on an individual identified as Virginia Sorensen?
Yes.
And do you have her autopsy protocol in front of you, Exhibit 63?
Yes.
And do you have a diagram detailing Ms. Sorensen's injuries on in Exhibit 164? Oh,
I don't have a diagram.
you do not have a diagram.
And once again, this is 164.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Do you see it in front of you?
Yes.
Does the documentation in Exhibit 164, is that a summary of your findings from the autopsy protocol for Ms. Sorensen?
Yes.
I would ask the court to admit Exhibits 164 and 63 and publish 164.
Objection.
Obviously, 164 is on the screen. Has Exhibit 63, the copy, been provided to Mr. Brooks?
Correct. The autopsy protocol for Virginia Sorensen as well as the diagram contained in 164 have both been provided to Mr. Brooks.
Objection, I don't consent to that name, nor do I agree to it.
Oh. All right. Exhibits 63 and 164 are both received. Permission to publish 164 is granted.
Thank you.
This cross-exam.
Let me know when you see it in the screen in front of you.
Yes.
Okay. Again, ma'am, the injuries that are detailed in Exhibit 164 that's showing on the screen, was that exhibit created as a result of your findings in the autopsy protocol for Ms. Sorensen?
Yes.
And can you describe for the jury what injuries you discovered? Well, first of all, strike that. Did you perform an external and an internal examination of Ms. Sorensen?
Objection. Reading the witness.
Overruled. She may answer.
Yes.
When did you perform those?
November 22nd, 2021.
And during the autopsy, what injuries did you discover on Ms. Sorensen?
Virginia Sorensen had blunt trauma to her head, neck, torso, and right leg.
Were you able to determine a cause of death for Ms. Sorensen?
Yes, multiple blunt force traumatic injuries.
And can you describe for the jury which injuries were fatal injuries?
Virginia
Objection. Reading
Sorensen.
the witness.
Overruled.
Virginia Sorensen also had a high cervical spine injury with laceration of her brainstem. She also had lacerations to her heart, either of which would have been fatal.
And is that consistent with being struck by a moving SUV weighing approximately 3,300 pounds?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled.
Yes.
Yeah, I know he's gonna sneak in at least one like.
Finally, Dr. Shields, did you
Vile
perform an
question that he-
autopsy on Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
And did you create an autopsy protocol after your examinations of Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
And did you perform, or did you create a diagram which displayed the injuries on Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
Do you have in front of you Exhibit 64, which is an autopsy protocol for Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
And I'm going to display what's been marked as State's Exhibit 165 on the screen in front of you.
Objection. I'm confused. The 64 or
They reference both.
oh, okay.
64 is the protocol, 165 is the diagram.
Okay. I was a little confused.
And for the record, the state did provide Mr. Brooks with a autopsy protocol for Jackson Sparks as well as a copy of Exhibit 165, which is the diagram. Ma'am?
Objection. I do
Doesn't
not
consent.
consent to that name, nor do I know that individual. For the record.
Please continue.
Thank you. Ma'am, does Exhibit 165, the diagram in front of you, accurately show the findings that you made during the autopsy of Jackson Sparks?
Yes.
Okay. I would ask the court to admit State's Exhibit 64 as well as State's Exhibit 165 into
Objection.
evidence and publish Exhibit 165.
Objection.
Overruled. Exhibit 64 is received. Exhibit 165 is received. Permission to publish is granted.
I'm kind of surprised he stopped requesting the
And
grounds.
Exhibit 165 is the diagram that you took, which displays the findings that you made in your autopsy protocol.
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury the injuries that you observed? Strike that. When did you do your external and internal examination of Jackson?
November 27th, 2021.
Why was that later than the others?
Jackson went to the hospital. He was pronounced brain dead on November 23rd.
And again, is there any reason why it would take till the 27th to perform the autopsy?
Objection.
He was
Hold
in.
on.
Oh, sorry.
Overruled. You may answer.
Jackson was in the hospital. He became an organ donor, which often requires a couple of extra days.
Can you describe for the jury his injuries?
Jack.
This is so messed up. This is messed up. Okay, alright, I'm just gonna let it
Jackson
play. I
had
don't even
bruising
have
around
anything to
both of
say
his
right now.
eyes. He had a large bruise to the left side of his forehead. He had undergone a craniectomy where the neurosurgeon removes a portion of the skull to relieve pressure on the brain from brain swelling. That's the large oval depicted on the left side of the skull in the diagram. He had trauma to his brain. He had bleeding around his brain inside his skull. He had multiple bruises to his brain. He also had a separation of his skull from his cervical spine. And he had 2 rib fractures on the right side.
What was his cause of death?
Complications of craniocerebral injuries due to blunt force trauma to head.
And what injuries of those were fatal?
Child.
His head
To a
injuries.
child.
And would that be consistent with it being struck by a moving SUV weighing approximately 3,300 pounds?
Yes.
Objection, hearsay.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
My God, man, I am not excited about this cross-exam. You know, this is just not... Like, this is messed up. And she had to see... She had to work on... Okay, I'm not even going to go into that level of detail about it. But it's like, this... You guys keep telling me, as the days go on, it is going to get worse. But like the heaviness, it's like the heaviness of the cake. You never get used to this stuff, you know? And now he's probably gonna act even more insane. Because for whatever reason, when he sees that people are showing, like, I'm trying to figure out how to say. It seems like when the witness is like expressing the fact that this had like a huge like emotional impact to them, like I said, he seems to be upset about that because he knows or something that people are showing them attention for it or something. Like, I don't even know. It's just something that it seems like I've noticed with like other witnesses that show their grief when it comes to dealing with this stuff. And it seems to, for whatever reason, incite like a anger in him for whatever reason. But I'm gonna stop talking now. Really, I'm just talking because I don't want to hear what he has to ask her. I wish they would let this poor woman just go home, to be honest, because this is a lot. But let's do it.
1 second.
Is he gonna fake cry or is he reading questions? Even the prosecution is disgusted with this crap. I think he's pretending like he's sad again. Dude, I'm getting like legit agitated now. Bro did this to a baby, man. Like I said, I consider small kids a baby, and he did that to a, like... Alright. Come on. Get the clown show going. No one cares 1% about any of this fake emotion right now.
Do you know why the decision was made to why the decision was made for Jackson to become an organ donor.
Objection is irrelevant.
Sustained.
Well, the only reason he became an organ donor is because you hit him with his vehicle. I wish, you know. All right. Let me not go that far with things. Let me just let this play out. Let me let this play out and stuff.
Did you end up doing any more autopsies besides those 3?
As it relates to this case or some other case, sir?
This case. To this case.
Did you hear the question?
Could he please repeat it?
Please repeat your question.
As far as this case, those the only 3 autopsies that you did?
Yes, Jackson Sparks, Virginia Sorensen, and Leanna Owens.
Dude, in this cross exam, what are you doing right now? I wish Judge Jennifer would literally just drop a 90611 on him just to show how much we do not care that he is like upset right now. I really wish she would. You know, he's sitting here for like 35 seconds in between each question and thinks like that's gonna, like we're gonna just feel so, no dude, 90611. All right, hurry up.
Can you recall when when they were brought to the hospital?
Virginia Sorensen and Leanna Owens were pronounced at the scene. Jackson Sparks was transported to the hospital.
I'm assuming that's Waukesha Memorial.
He was transferred to Children's Hospital of Wisconsin.
Upon first tending to the victims, were you in the knowledge of what happened?
Yes.
And that knowledge was given to you immediately?
Could you please repeat?
that knowledge was given to you immediately when you were called to tend to him?
Yes.
Or are you called to attend to any other victims of the incident? Or just the 3?
Jackson Sparks, Virginia Sorensen, and Leanna Owens.
You didn't tend to anyone else? Browns.
Overruled. She may answer.
No.
No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Shield. You may step down.
I'm gonna take a little break after that one. I'll be right back, y'all. Okay, we're back, everyone. They had a 10-minute break, so I just skipped ahead on that. I think they're about to start talking any second now. Let me try to get to that part. Oh.
Appearances are as they were before.
That was
Just to
heavy, them
confirm,
going into detail about the
Attorney
actual
Opper,
injuries
the next witness will be
and the causes of death.
the other medical examiner, and the exhibits related to that are hard copies have already been provided to the defendant.
That is correct, Your Honor, and also the state has put on the witness stand exhibits 59, 60, and 61, which are the autopsy protocols for Tamara Durand, Jane Kulik, and Wilhelm Hospital.
All right,
Okay.
thank you. Then, with that, we'll have
Looks
the
like
jury.
another.
Oh,
hold
one
on.
other thing.
I just had a question as to timing, as to how late you wanted to go today, so we can have enough witnesses here.
Sure. So I was not told of any conflict, so I would like to go between 5 and 6, depending on where we end with witnesses and where we end with direct and cross exam, and when we can begin someone, and how many individuals that you have. Would that work out with the individuals you have scheduled for this afternoon?
Yes, I believe so. And then tomorrow morning, I wanted to address timing for tomorrow morning as well, but we could do it later if you're anxious to get the jury in here, Your Honor.
I'd probably be inclined to have our normal time tomorrow, unless there's a request to do something different.
Yes, I'm going to request a 9 a.m. start time, Your Honor. I have a court appearance in Branch 10 that was put on in a kind of an emergency because there's a speedy trial demand that was made with an in-custody defendant. So we had been starting at 8:30. I agreed with Branch 10. I could be there at 8:15 to address that. I'm scheduled to present.
That's something I never thought about. They probably have like a bunch of other cases that they are working on like at the same time along with this, and that's something I didn't even consider. I know that like Judge Jennifer touched on that, and like before she mentioned that, that wasn't something I thought about either. Like the amount of work that has to go into this, and not only this case, this trial alone, but a bunch of others.
The district attorney's budget to
wild.
the county board tomorrow morning at 8:30. So if the court would be willing to start court at 9 a.m. tomorrow, then we'd be ready to go.
I don't have an issue with that. We can either cut into the lunch hour if we need be, go a little bit later. We have ample time, from my perspective, set aside for this entire case, even if the state believes they're a little bit behind.
And to that extent, Your Honor, we feel like we're making catching up a little bit here today. So.
Right. Mr. Brooks, any statement or comment based on the requests that have just been made?
No comment. Just briefly touch on the subject matter jurisdiction again. For the
The
record.
court will not be addressing that. Please bring out the jury.
What's the point, man? What is the point of... Okay. What is really the point of this at? Still going into this. Day 6. But it looks like we got another medical examiner coming out. This is a very heavy part of the trial. Like, I can see this is not going to be an easy part, like, by any means. None of these are easy parts. But just hearing the detail of them, just hearing them go into detail about the causes of death. Like, it's a lot to hear.
All right, then, the state may call its next witness.
Call Dr. Linda Bitzricki.
All right, good afternoon, Dr.
And then seeing him show,
Please
like,
make
fake
your way to the witness stand,
emotion
which is
and
to
all
my
this
right.
stuff.
Up one riser. When you get there, please remain standing, raise your right hand, and my clerk Teresa, who's on my left, will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. First thing I will ask you to do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
Linda, Lynda, Biedrzycki, Biedrzycki.
Thank you. Go ahead, your witness.
Thank you. Dr. Biedrzycki, how are you employed?
I'm the medical examiner for Waukesha County.
How long have you been the medical examiner for Waukesha County?
About 25 years.
And can you briefly describe for the jury your education and training that you obtained prior to becoming the medical examiner?
Yes. I went to medical school at the Medical College of Wisconsin. I did an internship in internal medicine. Then I did general pathology training, which is anatomic study of tissues, and clinical, which is laboratory medicine. 4 years of that at several different places, including the Medical College of Wisconsin, University of California, and William Beaumont Hospital. I did a fellowship in forensic pathology, which is the study of trauma and legal medicine in Detroit at Wayne County. And I did a year of cardiac pathology at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston.
Thank you.
That's incredible. But I was just gonna say really quick, it's interesting to see that I thought it was just like with law enforcement, they address the jury, like they look at the jury as they talk, but it's interesting to see that like even the medical examiners, and I think I've even seen, I want to say a few just like parade goers that also did the same thing. Like, it's interesting to see that they already understand that that's something they should do. Well, I'm not going to say it's something they should do. I really don't know if that's something that they're supposed to do or what, but I know it probably leaves like a much better impression on the jury when they see that they're addressing them directly. It's like almost their, which they are pretty much, they're speaking directly to them. And so I'm sure the information is like much better received. I don't know. It's just something I noticed with her testimony so far.
Direct your attention to November 22nd, 2021. Did you perform an autopsy on a Tamara Durand?
I did.
And did you prepare, as a result of the autopsy that you performed, an autopsy protocol?
Yes.
Did you also prepare a diagram for court in order to summarize your findings from your autopsy protocol?
I did.
Okay. In front of you, you should have State's Exhibit number 59, which is the autopsy protocol for Tamara Durand.
Yes.
Do you see that? Okay, and then I'm going to show in front of you Exhibit 166. It will be on the screen in front of you shortly. Ma'am, looking at the screen in front of you, is that your diagram that you prepared for testimony today, which shows your summary of the autopsy protocol, the injuries to Ms. Durand?
It is.
Okay. Can you describe for the jury, well, first of all, when did you perform the autopsy on Ms. Durand?
On November 23rd.
And were you aware that this was as a result of an incident that occurred in downtown Waukesha on November 21st, 2021?
Absolutely.
Overruled. Her answer may stand.
Did you go to the scene on November 21st, 2021?
I was there.
Okay. What were your findings with regard to Ms. Durant?
She had two groups of injuries, I like to say. One is from the impact of the car with the body, and these injuries include the marks on her hips that you can see on the posterior.
And I'm just going to ask the court, I apologize, permission to admit Exhibit 166 and 59 into evidence, and permission to publish 166.
Objection.
The objection is noted. It is overruled. Exhibits 59 and 166 are both received. Permission to publish 166 is granted.
I apologize. If you can start over with that testimony, they didn't have the diagram in front of them.
There are two groups of injuries, which is typical in a pedestrian injury. One is from the impact of the car with the body, and the external evidence of that are the marks on the back of her hips, which I indicated their heights between 34 and 38 inches. The abrasions and bruises, the red and blue marks. And those points of contact resulted in fractures of the pelvis on the right, which is indicated with green or dark lines across the pelvis on the skeleton picture. So the car struck her hip, broke her pelvis. The other injuries that are characteristic of pedestrian injuries are the small abrasions on her toes on the right. You see little red marks on the toes. She did not have the shoe on the right foot. The impact of the car with the body pulls the foot out of the shoe. This is very characteristic of a pedestrian injury because of the force and velocity of that impact. The second group of injuries is when the person strikes the ground after that impact, and that's reflected by the laceration or red mark on the back of her head, and then reflected by a line on the skeleton diagram across the skull, which is a fracture from ear to ear at the base of the skull, and two fractures in the occipital area or back of the head, which you see in the posterior skeleton, which extend basically to the base of the spinal cord. Internally, corresponding to that impact with the ground, there was subarachnoid hemorrhage or hemorrhage covering the brain, and also a tear at the level of the brainstem from that impact. Also, from the ground contact are multiple rib fractures. On the left, they were the upper ribs. There's little marks near the scapula on the left, and mid-ribs on the right. You can see the little marks there. And as a result of the impact that caused the fractures, there were also contusions of the lung bilaterally on the inside, and hemorrhage we call retroperitoneal hemorrhage, which is the area around the kidney on the right side. So there are two groups of blunt trauma.
And ma'am, I'm going to give you a pointer. I think it's hard maybe for the jury. I'm having a hard time seeing some of the dots on the skeletal diagram.
Objection. Relevant see it is.
Overruled.
Grounds for the overrule.
So what happened to the guilt? I guess the guilt is gone now, huh? I guess all the guilt he felt is out the window now. Dude.
Relevant.
Again, if you can just briefly describe what you just testified to, or briefly point to what you testified to.
Objection. Action answer.
Overruled. The witness may answer.
Okay. So the first type of injury from the car, the skeletal
get him off the screen,
fractures of the pelvis here, and the external marks here at the heights that I've indicated from the hood of the vehicle. The toes are seen at this time. If you could bring them up right here. On the top of the toes, when they're lifted out of the shoe, there's often scraping, and that's what you'll see. Then the second group of injuries from the contact with the ground, if you can go down now. is a laceration to the back of the head from contact with the ground, a fracture across the base of the skull, ear to ear,
I see the red
fractures
dot
to the back of the head on the right and the left, and internally subarachnoid hemorrhage and the brainstem tear. In the chest, fractures here, ribs 3 and 4, and 5 and 6 on this side, with also contusions to the lungs, pulmonary contusions bilaterally, and retroperitoneal hemorrhage, or hemorrhage in the soft tissue around the kidney area. And just because it's flipped, this kidney area, the right kidney, is in this area of the skeleton, right above the areas of the fractures of the pelvis.
You have measurements on the third diagram from the left-hand side. What is the significance of those measurements? You had talked about the height of the car. Did you see the suspect vehicle, or did you go to look at the suspect vehicle in this case?
Yes, I did.
Overruled. She may answer. Go ahead.
I did. On November.
What did he say? What did he? I didn't even
go to look at
hear
the
what he
suspect
said.
vehicle in this case?
Yes, I did.
Leading the
Overruled.
witness.
She may answer. Go ahead.
I did. On November 23rd, I went to Fleet in the county complex where the car was being held, and I examined the car, looking for points of contact between the car and the pedestrians. And I also looked at the configuration of the vehicle, like the height of the hood, what the wheels look like, what the tires look like, where the bumper was, where the damage was, and took multiple pictures.
And with the...
Sorry, I know I'm pausing in mid-question. So maybe she does... Maybe she is a medical examiner for law enforcement. Like, maybe I'm just getting that part mixed up. Because if they allowed her to go and look at the vehicle and, like, examine the vehicle and everything, maybe she is, like, a branch of law enforcement. And I just didn't hear her explain that part at the beginning.
Observations
I'd
that
imagine
you
she
made on
is.
again, the third diagram from the left, and those measurements, that would be consistent with the measurements taken of the hood height of the suspect vehicle?
Yes, it's typical of the more SUV type of configuration of a car. I mean, a very low sports car would have the hood would be low and the bumper, and if a bumper protrudes, then the bumper might be the leading edge. But SUVs have kind of a flat front and a higher hood. The hood that I measured and the vehicle was damaged was 42 centimeters, but that's only at one point because the configuration of the hood had different shapes as the metal was curved over the wheel well and so forth. So these measurements, 38.5, 37, 32.5, are pretty good for the height of a SUV type vehicle at the point of contact at the pelvis.
Thank you. You may have a seat. Ma'am, can you
And I saw a
describe
picture
the
of the
fatal injuries that were
SUV
suffered
too.
by Mr. Rand?
The head injuries, the brainstem injury was quite severe. That would alone be fatal. The pulmonary injuries and the rib fractures could also alone be fatal, causing respiratory compromise. And the pelvic injuries could alone be fatal, causing hemorrhage. So she died of multiple blunt trauma, but each area of injury was quite severe in and of itself.
Would that be consistent with her being struck by a moving SUV weighing in excess of 3,300 pounds?
Absolutely.
He's going to object.
It's overruled. She may answer.
It's typical of a pedestrian injury. It's typical of an injury with a SUV configuration, and the speed would be at least considerable because of the momentum which resulted in these severe injuries.
When you say the speed would need to be considerable, what does that mean?
I will explain. Injuries are proportional to the energy delivered, kinetic energy. Kinetic energy, the formula, is 1/2 times mass. Mass would be the 3,300 pounds times velocity squared. So velocity is like really critical. So if you look at severity of injuries and speed of the vehicle on a graph, the graph doesn't go like this. It's not when speed increases, injuries increase that way. Injuries increase like this because velocity is such an important part of the equation.
Thank you. Moving next to the autopsy that you performed on Jane Kulik, I would direct your attention to State's Exhibit number 61.
Yes.
And also I'm going to project in front of you State's Exhibit 167, which is the diagram, I believe, that you created for the, to assist in the testimony today.
Yes.
Let me know when you see that diagram.
I see it.
Okay. And does that accurately depict the findings that you made in your autopsy protocol?
Yes.
I would ask the court to admit State's Exhibit 61 and admit and publish 167.
Where's 61? Objection, where's 61?
You should have that. It's not been on the screen. It was provided to you previously.
That'd be the autopsy protocol for Jane Kulik.
All right, Exhibit 61 is received. Exhibit 167 is received, and permission to publish is granted.
Now, ma'am, directing your attention to November 23rd of last year, did you perform an autopsy on Jane Kulik?
I did.
And can you describe your findings during that autopsy? And if you can use Exhibit 167 as well as the pointer and the screen to your right.
Okay. So Ms. Kulik had 3 types of injuries. She had the first kind we discussed, being struck by the vehicle. We have an impact to the left hip here at 39.5 inches, and we have pelvic fractures on the left here. We
She had a
have
fracture in the middle of her spine.
injuries to the tops of the toes. Now, she had no shoes when I saw her, but the sock on the left foot was torn right in the area of the toes. Also, there's an abrasion to the top of the foot. That would be considered with being taken out of her shoe. So that's from the car impact. Then second, we have injuries from hitting the ground. We have a laceration to the back of the head. And we have some abrasions on the left side of the face and the nose area. The third type of injury she has is being run over by a tire. So we have a squared off abrasion across the upper abdomen, lower rib area that was sharply demarcated as I drew there. So it's not as if the abrasion blended into the skin, like if you do a sliding motion, but it was quite sharply demarcated. And associated with this injury, her liver was like lacerated, multiple tears in the liver, bleeding from that liver injury. She had multiple fractures on the right side of her chest. Anteriorly, she also had lower rib fractures posteriorly here. So the pressure of the tire compressed the liver, and it also compressed the part of the chest. The diaphragm on the right was also torn. There's also looked like a tire mark on the lower part of her left leg. There were no fractures under that site. So she had impact from the vehicle, impact to the ground, and then crushing from the tire.
What did you determine the cause of death to be for Ms. Kulik?
Multiple blunt trauma.
And the fatal injuries, can you describe those for the jury?
Her injuries from being run over were probably the most severe, with the multiple rib fractures and the crushing of the liver. Also severe, however, was the pelvic fractures. Pelvic fractures, I didn't maybe explain, cause a lot of bleeding because your aorta divides in the pelvis into your iliac artery, so it's a very big blood vessel, and also your inferior vena cava is there. So if you damage any blood vessels in the area of the pelvis, you're damaging pretty large caliber vessels, and you can lose a lot of blood. So, and also there's bone marrow in the pelvis. So pelvic injuries, especially when they're fragmented, as it was in her case, can be very, very serious. So I would say those were the two, and then the rib fractures, and I didn't mention, she also has pulmonary contusions on the right and hemorrhage in the retroperitoneum on the right. So those injuries, the chest injuries, the pelvic injuries, and the abdominal injuries, each were very serious and could have been fatal individually.
And is that consistent with Ms. Kulik being struck by a moving SUV weighing in excess of 3,300 pounds?
Yes.
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. Transfer my stand.
Yes.
Thank you. Finally, ma'am, I'm going to direct you to the autopsy protocol for Wilhelm Hospital, which is Exhibit 60. That should be in front of you.
Yes.
Did you prepare a diagram documenting your findings through the autopsy protocol?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 168.
Yes.
Okay. I'd ask the court to admit Exhibit 60, which is the autopsy protocol, as well as the diagram contained in Exhibit 162. Or 168, I'm sorry. And permission to publish 168.
Objection.
Noted, it's overruled. Exhibits 60 and 168 are both received. Permission to publish. Exhibit 168 is granted.
What was the first one?
60.
And ma'am, did you perform
Whatever these
an
weird
autopsy
questions are
on
that he's
Wilhelm
writing down.
Hospital on November 22nd, 2021?
I did.
And can you explain for the jury your findings that are contained on Exhibit 168?
Yes. Mr. Hospital had similar types of injuries from the impact of the car. He had a very rectangular shaped bruise, 42 inches above the heel to the back of the left hip. And he also had a bruise above, right around the back of the knee, slightly above and slightly below, but extending between 16.5 and 24 inches above the knee. This hip bruise corresponds to the fractures of the left side of the pelvis, right here. He also had foot injuries. Instead of the toes, he had marks to the back of both heels, and that could be because of the type of footwear. Again, he did not, I saw Mr. Hospital without clothing, so I did not see the shoes. They were taken off at the hospital because he had surgery, but he did have injuries that we often see in pedestrians as well, whether the shoes were taken off or just the friction from being struck. Then he had the injuries from hitting the ground, which were lacerations and abrasions to the head on the right side and on the back. And the result of that was a fracture on the right side of the head. But this is kind of also interesting and shows how this injury occurred. The fracture's on the right side of the head, but the bruise to the brain and small subdural is on the left side of the head. That's called contre-coup. And that type of injury occurs in a moving head injury. So his head was moving, hit the ground on the right, caused the bruise on the left because of the rebound of the brain striking the skull. So he had injuries from being struck by the car and injuries from hitting the ground.
Now you testified, first of all, about the injuries to the back in the second diagram from the left and the height of those injuries. Are there any relevance of the height of those injuries as well as the measurements that you took of the suspect vehicle, which was a red Ford SUV?
Yes. When I measured the side of the hood, I got 42 inches. There's a picture with a tape measure showing that. So that corresponds well to the height of this particular pattern injury. And the height of the top of the bumper, because now the bumper is not a shiny chrome protruding bumper, that's kind of a flat bumper that's painted the same color as the vehicle, so it's rather broad, is about 26 inches, which would correspond to a strike to the back of the left leg there.
Thank you. And you had testified that unlike the other two people that you had performed autopsies on, were those people brought to the medical examiner's office from the crime scene being Main Street?
Objection. Leave the witness.
Mr.
Hold
Rand,
on, overruled. She may answer.
I'm sorry. Mr. Rand was brought from the scene, and I saw her at the scene before I did the autopsy. Ms. Kulik was brought from Waukesha Memorial Hospital, where she was pronounced, and Mr. Hospital was brought later because he was treated at the hospital.
And can you describe, or did you determine the cause of death to be for Mr. Hospital?
multiple blunt force trauma.
And the fatal injuries for Mr. Hospital, can you describe those for the jury?
Answer.
Overruled, she may answer.
Okay. Mr. Hospital's most severe injuries were related to his pelvic injuries, which he lost a lot of blood. They required to put a coil to try to obstruct the bleeding vessel to stop it from bleeding. It was not accessible surgically. They had to put like a coil through the vasculature. But also the impact here caused an injury to the thoracic duct, which carries your lymph fluid. And as a result of that injury, he also had an accumulation of fluid in both chest cavities of the lymph fluid that occurred during the hospital course, which impaired his respiratory status. So it's an indirect cause of the injury, the accumulation of the fluid, but they both were related to the impact of the vehicle. His head injuries, it's harder to assess because he died. He did present with a change in consciousness, so it's possible those head injuries would have also have been independently fatal.
And would those fatal injuries and the injuries that you've described, would those be consistent with being struck by a moving SUV weighing in excess of 3,300 pounds?
Objection.
Overruled, you may answer.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Nothing further, thank you.
I'm hoping he doesn't ask like a really stupid question about, because like the longer that you hear the way this dude like talks and the way he forms his questions, you start to understand like some of the stuff that he would latch onto during their during their testimony. Like you hear certain parts that you're like, okay, I can see him asking something about this. I feel like he's gonna ask something about like the brain injury. The brain injury for Bill, and he's probably gonna ask something along the lines of like, so how could you say that it was possibly fatal if you don't really know for sure? Like just really just evil stuff like that, man. But really I'm just stalling right now because I don't want to hear what he has to say. But we're gonna go ahead and let's go ahead and get to it.
Any questions for this witness?
I do.
Because all the guilt is gone at this point. You know, big shock.
Your primary field is in the medical field. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Any reason why you would be inspecting a car if that's not a medical professional thing?
The examination of anything that's related to injuries in the people that I later examine is relevant in my specialty of forensic pathology.
I'm surprised he didn't follow up. Usually when he finds a weird like angle with stuff, he keeps trying to press the issue, you know? She answered it perfectly, but he'll still like, he'll say, but yeah, that's not a human being or something like he'll just follow up with something really stupid. And he probably still will.
So examining the vehicle would be important to your medical assessments in what way?
Because the injuries that people sustain, whether it's a vehicle in this case or anything else, it's important to correspond the nature of the implement being the car. So it's possible I would be shown a car that would be not consistent with the injuries.
So it would be fair to say you've done numerous autopsies in your time as a medical professional. Would that be fair to say?
That's true.
And as you just said, examining the vehicle would be essential to your medical expertise. Is that fair to say?
examining the vehicle is important to interpret the injuries. I'm not sure that, I don't know if that's the answer to your question.
So if you were doing an injury assessment based on if the injury was caused by a different kind of instrument, would the same apply to having to view that?
Yes, if in cases of gunshot wounds, I asked to see the gun. In cases of stabbings or blunt trauma, I asked to see the weapons that they think were used, so I can determine if they are consistent or not consistent. I can't make matches, like precise matches, but I can say it looks like a baseball bat or it looks like a pair of scissors, that kind of thing.
It would be fair to say if in a case of a gunshot wound, as you brought up, it wouldn't be, it would, let me back up. It would.
He's going to say something really dumb right now.
Would you say it would be hard to assess the gun, being that it wouldn't be the actual gun, but the bullets that caused the injury?
Well, actually, I don't examine the bullets, but I would examine the gun, especially, for example, if it's a contact wound. So if the muzzle of the gun touches the skin, then the muzzle could leave a mark. So then I could say the muzzle of the gun shown to me might match the mark.
And that, if it was something similar to that, the muzzle type thing, that would be, the mark would be from the heat. Would that be fair to say?
No, not actually. It's actually from the contact of the metal. So it's more of an abrasion than a burn.
See, I'm confused. Is this just curiosity right now? So is he like genuinely curious on how this stuff works and that's why he's asking this? Like, because there was no gun used in this, so why is he like going off on a line of questions?
So in a case like that, what would be the significance of the actual inspection of the gun?
Question. I think it's a little bit of field of where we're at.
Grounds.
Overruled. She may answer. She brought it up as an example. I'll allow a little bit of leeway, but go ahead.
Could you repeat your question?
What would be the significance in a case like that? As you stated, you view all types of instruments, gunshot wounds and things of that nature. What would be the significance of inspecting the actual gun in terms of the injury?
Well, I may be able to say that the mark on the skin, for example, is consistent with the outline of the muzzle of that particular weapon, looking at the dimensions and shape.
So what if it was used from a distance? Then what would be the essential reason to inspect the gun?
Depending on the distance, sometimes the pattern of stippling, like for example, if there's a flash suppression or something used, that can play a role. If it's very far away, then the actual characteristics of the weapon are more general. In other words, the size of the hole, for example, or might reflect both the size of the caliber of the gun or the velocity. So it depends on, distance does play a role on what I would be evaluating.
Here come more gun questions.
Do you know if at the time you did the autopsies, if any of the victims you performed the autopsy on had any underlying illnesses at that time, any cancers or anything like that that may have been going on at the time that you did the autopsy?
Yes, I would make observations of any natural disease processes that I saw at the time of autopsy.
Did you observe any?
Yes.
Do you recall from who that was?
Well, Mr. Hospital, he was an older gentleman. He had some heart disease, as I recall, a pacemaker, some coronary artery disease. Ms. Kulik, as I recall, had a large fibroid. That's what I remember. I could look and clarify my memory further, but those are examples.
Can you explain to the jury what is a large thyroid? Is that the word you thyroid?
Fibroid.
I'm sorry.
Yes. It's
fibroid.
A benign uterine tumor.
Is that a form of cancer?
No.
And you said the older gentleman had some fluid buildup in the chest. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to misquote you. Some type of fluid around the chest area.
Correct.
That was related to the injury from
your recollection. That wasn't caused by the vehicle.
That was. He entered the hospital actually with no evidence of that fluid, but it's lymphatic fluid from the thoracic duct, from a thoracic duct injury. So over the time he was treated, especially with the fluid resuscitation, because of the blood loss, the fluid collected in the hospital as a rupture of that thoracic duct injury and was in the pleural space surrounding the lungs.
Exactly.
So that it would be fair to say that came about once
due
he was
to the
already
injury you
at
gave
the
him.
hospital.
That's true.
And you said he had a pacemaker. Would that have any effect whatsoever on what might have been going on in his chest at the time?
No, and because he was in the hospital, the function of that pacemaker was well documented while he was being monitored.
Was it pretty active, still working properly at that time?
It was.
Even with the loss of blood, as you say, he had a loss of blood. Even then, was it still working pretty good?
She just
yes,
said.
the loss of blood had no effect on the electrical function of the pacemaker.
I'm glad every angle that this man is trying to wiggle out using it, every angle he's trying to use right now is getting shut down. I love moments like this, not what she's describing, but I love these little moments where like he's trying so desperately, right, to wriggle out of this, and every turn is just being closed off. It's incredible. He single-handedly caused all of their deaths, so he can't even sit here and try that little angle that he's attempting to use right now.
And were you at the parade at the time of the incident?
No, I was called after.
So at the time you were called, did you know any information about the incident?
Yes, because I was called in my function as a medical examiner, I was informed about the death of numerous people, injuries of more, and that this was a result of a car going through the parade.
Do you recall if it was referred to as a car or a SUV?
I'm sure I was told it was an SUV because the vehicle in question was in custody at the time.
And you were already privy to that information before you arrived at the scene?
Either before or at the scene.
Do you recall whom informed you of that?
It could either have been my staff, who were the first people notified, so they would have reported to me what they were told, or it could have been detectives at the scene who I also interacted with.
So it would be fair to say you don't really recall?
Not specifically.
And you said you observed damage to the vehicle when you were able to view it?
Yes.
Yeah, the front of that SUV was mangled.
Would you say it was extensive damage, or did you really look at one specific area? Or
It was like completely
let me rephrase
caved
that.
in.
Were you really focused on one certain area of the vehicle when you viewed it?
Well, when I was examining the car, actually the crime lab was there. So we looked at the entire circumference of the vehicle, and the vehicle was also on a lift, and we looked under the vehicle because we were questioning whether there was clothing perhaps or other physical evidence that would be important to document. So I would say that I looked at the car quite comprehensively, although it was not my job to document damage to the vehicle per se, other than what related to my autopsy interest.
And that would be specifically looking at the hood of the vehicle to determine how it fit with your medical expertise?
Well, I paid attention to the front end of the vehicle, which is the part that typically is involved in pedestrian strikes. And those are the parts that I paid more attention to in terms of measurement than, say, I don't know, but it would be wherever the damage is, because now I'm thinking in some pedestrian strikes there are cracks to the windshield or injuries to the side mirrors and so forth. So I paid attention wherever I thought the damage would be that would be relevant to my cases. But I did take measurements of the front end.
With your expertise, would you determine that all of the damage that you observed would be caused strictly from hitting one thing or numerous?
I can say that there were multiple areas of the car that had damage, so it would seem unlikely to be from one impact, because in my experience, it's, you could have a frontal impact, you can have a side impact, you can be rear-ended, but there were dents, if you will, in multiple areas of the car.
So from your expertise, that could have came from a number of different things.
That's true.
You made a brief observation about speed and velocity. Do you have any expertise in that area?
Only to the extent that I understand how injuries occur, and in terms of the transfer of kinetic energy, because all injuries I see in the body have to do with that kind of transfer.
Would it be fair to say that everybody is different, though?
Everybody is different.
So with May, I guess I would phrase the question by saying, something that may seriously injure someone else probably wouldn't seriously injure another person, based on your expertise.
Generally, things of a serious nature don't become not serious. I would say that different people might have this, there are differences in people and how injuries how different events might injure them. But I wouldn't say that something that's serious in one individual would be minimal in another.
What is he trying to say with that? What is that even? Like, I'm honestly trying to understand what that even means. Is he saying because of the way that, maybe because like they're older, or because, it was children and older adults, that if they weren't that, then they wouldn't have been injured as badly as they were, or killed from him striking them? Like, but you still did it. What does that have to do? I don't even want to try to make sense.
Even though there might be a range,
let's just let it.
It's not going to be okay for one person, but maybe deadly for another. That is not typically how it is.
But it can vary.
It can vary.
Do you recall how many people you were called to attend to the night of the incident?
How many people I was called to attend to?
Yes.
There were 3 victims on the road. Those are the ones that I saw that night.
Did you see anyone else besides those 3?
I later saw Ms. Kulik, who came from the hospital. Those were the people I examined that evening.
So it was just the 3?
The 4.
Oh, I'm sorry, 4.
Yes,
And no one besides those 4?
correct.
Do you recall being notified possibly to testify in this matter?
Yes.
Do you know about when?
I knew always that this case would end up in trial. I mean, but I don't remember when I actually had a date and time for appearance.
And
I was literally just about to say, I wonder why he's steered away from his sovereign citizen BS, but it looks like he's about to go into that line of questions.
how would you
now,
know
so let's see.
exactly that the case would end up in trial? And I say that because many factors could play out along, many different things happen over time.
You're right. That was probably a misstatement on my part. I thought it might go to trial, given the nature of the case, but I did not know for sure.
That makes sense, definitely.
She got the Darrell stamp of approval. That means so
So
much.
you had an idea that you might be testifying.
That's true.
And when did you know for sure that you would be testifying?
But you really only know for sure when you're called to court. You get a subpoena and things can still change. So I guess that's the best answer I can give you.
Do you recall when you were subpoenaed?
No,
Was it fairly recent to now, or was it some time ago, a few months?
probably not months, but I don't remember.
Do you recall whom you were subpoenaed by?
The district attorney.
Would that be referring to one of the district attorneys here today?
Sue Opper.
Do you recall what time you arrived on the scene after the incident that night?
It was about 10 to 8.
And do you recall what time you finally left the scene?
No, I don't recall exactly.
Would it be fair to say you were there for quite some time?
Probably around an hour or so, and then we continued our work at the medical examiner's office for a couple more hours.
And after you were subpoenaed, did you were you in contact with Attorney Opper after that?
Yes.
Uh-oh. Darrell's brain is just, his mind is blown right now, I'm telling you.
Did Attorney Opper ever state that she was the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained. You do not have to answer that question.
Grounds for the sustain, Your Honor.
You may ask your next question.
Were you ever made aware of the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection,
Grounds.
relevance.
Sustained. You do not have to answer that. Please ask your next question.
Grounds for the sustain, Your Honor, before I continue.
Ask your next question.
Do you even know if there's a plaintiff in this matter?
Objection,
Grounds.
relevance.
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
Ask your next question.
No reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
Ask your next question.
906. 11. Let's do it. Somebody brought this up in the comments as well, and I'm starting to pick up on that. When he runs out of questions, it's almost like he tries to get Judge Jennifer to end his cross-exam for him, and I do think that's what he's doing, actually. Like, it seems like, because he knows that him continuously pressing about the grounds, like, this is what has ended previous cross-exams. So him doing it all over again, he probably does for whatever reason. Like, he wants her to end it for him. Like, I don't know why, but that is a really good point, and I'm actually starting to see it.
Do you know of any claims filed in this matter by you or anyone else?
What are claims?
Any reports filed? Any?
He doesn't know. Look at this. He's pulling it out of thin air.
On your behalf or anyone you know?
I'm actually not sure I understand that.
I would object to it. It's vague.
Grounds.
Sustained. Sustained is to the form of the question.
Did you make any claim of being an injured party in this matter?
No.
Do you know of anybody that has?
Objection relevance.
Grounds.
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
Relevance. Speculation. Vague.
I was hoping so badly. She would just respond with 906. Like, I need to stop, like, hoping for it at this point, because I feel like he's going to keep pressing to the point where she's going to do it. But, because it seems like he wants her to end the cross-exam for him. Like, I don't know why. He can just say no further questions, but he wants to take it that far for some reason.
You had any opportunity to view a complaint in this matter?
Objection vague.
Grounds.
Sustained as to the form.
Have you ever seen a complaint in this matter?
Objection vague.
Grounds.
Sustained as to the form.
Have you ever at any time had any interaction with the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection.
Grounds.
Sustained.
Reason for the sustain, Your Honor?
Vague. Relevance.
I would object to that sustain. You said vague and relevant to the
Sustained.
case.
Next question, sir.
It's relevant, Your Honor. Jury deserves to know.
Noted. It's overruled.
He wants her to end it.
I respect that.
There's no way he
Deserves to
doesn't.
know, though.
Jury will disregard the last statement made by Mr. Brooks. It's not his time to testify. Comments made by the parties or attorneys are not evidence.
Have you ever seen the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection relevance.
Grounds.
Sustained.
Didn't you just
Reason
ask
for the
that?
sustain, Your Honor?
Same as before.
So that would be relevancy and vagueness.
Ask your next question.
Was today your first time ever seeing those exhibits that were shown?
No.
You've seen those before, those videos?
She created them.
Videos?
Yeah, the exhibits that were shown.
Didn't she say she was the one that...
Diagrams?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't know that's how you identified them.
Oh, well, I drew them.
Oh, those exact ones?
Yes.
Also, okay. I wasn't aware of that. I apologize for that question. And so I'm assuming at some point you turned those over to the district attorney. Would that be fair to say?
Today.
Oh, today. Any reason why you didn't previously turn those over before you actually were called to test, or before you knew that you would be testifying today?
I decided to prepare them for the purpose of testimony. They didn't exist before today.
That's interesting. So this was really like a 11th hour, bottom of the night thing for you to get them prepared and be ready to go today then. Would that be fair to say?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's true, I did finish preparing them today, but I was, what shall I say? I was detailing them and wanted them to be as good as possible.
So how long did it take for you to detail them?
I guess I have to explain that there are no pre-existing diagrams of front and back, skeleton and body diagrams in my office's collection of diagrams. So I spent time finding the proper diagrams, scaling them, composing them, and putting them in a format that I thought would be the best to illustrate the points I wanted to make. So I created the basic diagram, and then I decided on how to describe the injuries, and I, did one version, then I did another version. I wanted it to be very good, and so that's why I can say it didn't exist in the form you saw today until today, because that's what I was doing.
So would it be fair to say that you have been working at this for some time then, to get it the way you...
A few days.
Did you anticipate that you would be using those diagrams?
Yes.
So I'm assuming that some type of conversation had to be had in order for you to work that hard on those diagrams. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
And you had that conversation with Attorney Opper?
Yes.
To your knowledge, why would you, well, not why, take that back. To your knowledge, what would be the reason why you weren't already asked to develop those diagrams? Meaning, why weren't you asked this months ago in advance?
I don't think that anybody thinks about what exhibits might be used in a trial until the trial approaches, would be my answer.
But it would be fair to say that you just testified that you didn't know for sure if there would be a trial.
Correct.
It was an assumption.
Correct.
He's really grasping at straws right now. This cross-exam really should have ended a while ago.
Had you ever created any diagrams like that before this incident?
I'm sorry. For these cases?
Or at any time before this particular case?
Are you still you're not referring to these particular cases?
These particular, the way that you did these. Had you ever done this before this incident?
I've used diagrams in many, many trials. I just didn't have a diagram that displayed the body and the skeleton in this manner. I had no pre-existing form, but I use diagrams all the time.
So for this particular case, you decided to go a little bit extra. Would that be fair to say? Grounds.
Sustained. As to the form of the question.
Would it be fair to say then that for this particular case, you decided that you would want a diagram that was a little bit more defined?
What I decided was we had 3 decedents, and I thought it would be easiest for the jury to understand the complexity of the injuries when talking about 3 people sequentially if I could compress the information. Otherwise, a typical autopsy might have a skull diagram and then another page a body diagram and then another page a skeleton. You know, it would be multiple pages, and I thought that would be very difficult when we're talking about 3 different people.
Honestly, this cross-exam he's doing is so unclear. It's almost like his entire cross-exam could be sustained. Like every question could be sustained. Because as I'm listening to it, I'm having a hard time really putting together what he's even hinting at. But then again, like this is the medical, like she's in the medical field, so it's tough for even me to comprehend like some of the things that she's saying. But at the same time, when he's trying to word these questions, I literally have no clue what he's even getting at.
So had you thought of that before in any other cases that you've done before this one?
I don't remember testifying about 3 pedestrians in trial in one sitting ever before.
No. I wasn't asking if you've testified at a trial before. I was asking based on...
What are you asking?
The explanation that you just gave about making it easier to read the diagrams. Had you ever thought of that before this particular case?
Yes. It's not unusual for me to create my own diagrams specific to a case.
What I meant by that question was the way that you designed these particular diagrams. Had you thought of doing it this way before this particular incident?
This is asked and answered.
Sustained.
Grounds for the sustained, Your Honor.
Next question, please.
Oh boy, he's writing something down. Probably another round of sovereign citizen stuff.
Do you recall when you completed all your medical work for this particular case?
Well, the autopsy report was signed in February of 2022. So my medical work, my conclusions were concluded at that time.
So about 8 months. At the time that you concluded your reports, were you already thinking about forming the diagrams for the injuries?
No.
So that kind of came about during the process of possibly knowing that you might testify.
The diagrams were created as court exhibits.
Today?
Completed today.
Do you recall at what time they were completed today? Was it morning or shortly before you came in, or grounds?
Overruled. She may answer.
I think I actually completed them last night, but we got the copies made this morning, and they were not given to Ms. Opper until today. So I think they actually were completed in terms of my sketching last night, but they were not, I had to get color copies made and they had to be submitted. So I would say, I thought of them as being done this morning, but I was working on them last night.
No further questions.
Briefly.
Finally.
Ma'am, to follow up on these diagrams that have been presented in court today, are all the findings that are contained in those diagrams from the autopsy protocol?
Yes.
Overruled.
Relevancy.
Overruled.
And ma'am, could you have brought in a it's Halloween, so we see them all over the place, but could you have brought in a skeleton and described the same injuries?
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled. It's
Objection.
redirect.
Hearsay.
She may. It's not hearsay. She may answer.
I could show you the broken bones on the skeleton. I couldn't show you the injuries to the soft tissues or the organs on the skeleton.
And if you had in a doll or a mannequin, that would be something that you could show the jury, just like you did in these diagrams, where the injuries, the external injuries were. Would that be a correct statement?
Relevancy.
Overruled. You may answer.
That's true.
So is there anything on these diagrams that were not contained within the autopsy protocol that were turned over to the state months ago?
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled.
No, there's nothing on the diagrams that was not, that isn't listed in the autopsy reports.
In fact, if I had a blank diagram in reviewing the autopsy protocol today, if I put a blank diagram in front of you, could you have made these same markings right here? And it would have just taken time, obviously, but could you have done it right now?
Objection. Lead the witness.
Overruled. You may.
He's really going for broke with these objections. Like, he knows that that entire cross-exam was a 100% fail. So he's just throwing everything out right now. And somebody else reminded me of that in the comment section. Like, it's certain stuff I don't pick up on when it comes to him. Like, you guys always point it out to me.
Answer.
Yes, I could.
Thank you. Now I want to talk briefly about Jane Kulik's autopsy. You had stated that you had discovered a benign uterine fibroid. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did that in any way, was that a factor in her death?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. She may answer.
No.
And with regard to Wilhelm Hospital, was the presence of a pacemaker in any way related to his death?
Objection. I asked that in my cross and she answered.
Overruled. It's redirect. It's
Is that an
proper.
objection, or
The
is
state
that
may
just
ask
you
it.
saying
You may
something?
answer.
No.
The coronary disease that you testified to on cross-examination, did that play a factor in his death?
Objection. Same reason.
Overruled.
Already
You may
answered.
answer.
No.
The thoracic fluid found in Mr. Hospital's lungs that you said did play a factor in his death. Is that correct?
Yes.
What caused that fluid buildup around his lungs?
Objection. Answered already.
Overruled.
Well, she's
You may
going to
answer.
repeat it for the
There was
jury
an
here.
injury to the thoracic duct that was caused by the impact of the vehicle to his body.
Nothing further, thank you.
All right. Thank you. You may step down.
He's got a ton of questions. Look at this. All he's going to want to do is ask about his subject matter jurisdiction. Oh, goodness. We're seeing it right now as these horrible questions pop into his head.
My jurors are
We just saw
okay.
it.
Just thought we'd stand for a bit, but then keep going with testimony. So everyone may stand. Do a little stretch break. We haven't done one of those in a while. Probably a good thing the camera can't capture you.
It's the first time I've ever seen him do this, I think. But But yeah, I do want to say thank you so much to Sarah Dowling and Rebecca Reams for
When
their
you're ready, have a
$10
seat.
donations. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. And I don't ask anybody to send me donations or anything like that. The only thing I will
All right,
say
the statement calls
is,
next witness.
let me actually pause. The only thing I will say is if you guys would like to donate to the community of Waukesha or the victims that were involved in the 2021 Waukesha parade, then you can find that at the top of the comment section. I always pin it at the top, links to donate to the victims. So if anybody's looking for that, it will be there for them. But thank you all so much, and thank you to everybody that's watching. You know, thank you to everyone. But just wanted to take the time to take that, or to say that.
Father Matthew Witter.
Sir, if you would please make your way to my witness stand, which is all the way up here, upper riser to my right. When you get there, please remain standing, raise your right hand. My clerk, Teresa, will swear you in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Please have a seat. The first thing I will have you do is state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
My name is Matthew Witter, M-A-T-T-H-E-W.
It must be like a
last name Witter, W-I-D-D as in dog, E-R.
A priest or
You
like
can
a
go ahead and
pastor.
witness.
Sir, how are you employed?
I'm the pastor of the Catholic community of Waukesha for several
Pastor.
Catholic churches in the city of Waukesha.
And what are those Catholic churches?
So St. William, St. Joseph, St. Mary, and St. John Newman. We're also associated with Waukesha Catholic, the school.
Okay, thank you. And when you say the Catholic community of Waukesha, 4 parishes, and you're the pastor at all 4?
Exactly, yep. There's 4 of us priests. I'm the pastor. There's 2 other priests and a team, that kind of works together.
So you actually do sermons or services at each of the 4 churches?
Yep, exactly. So we'd, the 4 of us priests kind of go around and exactly wherever we're called to be. We're kind of on a bit of a rotation, but we're at all those 4 churches.
Okay. Directing your attention to November 21st of last year, were you at the City of Waukesha Christmas Parade?
Exactly. I was the Catholic community of Waukesha, Waukesha Catholic. We're walking in the parade.
Okay. And when you say, were there just one group of people, or when you said the school and the church?
Yeah, we were one group.
Okay.
One group.
Did you have a float or anything?
We did not have a float. There was a banner, and the banner was kind of being carried at different times by a different amount of people, but otherwise we were walking different proximity to the front and back. We were spread out a little bit.
Approximately how many people were in that group that day?
Probably between 40 and 50.
Was there any type of formation?
There wasn't like I think at different times we were probably closer together, at different times we were more spread out. As the parade went on, I think, some people walk faster, some slower.
I'm interested. Okay, so this is going to be another interesting cross exam. It's to the point now where like all I'm, or it's not all I'm doing, but it's like as soon as a witness comes up to the stand, I'm wondering like, okay, how is Darrell gonna respond to this person? Like, how are his questions gonna be? Because, and the reason why I say it's interesting is because we know how he behaves towards female witnesses. So here, he's a guy, but also he's a priest. And knowing like the opportunist that Darrell is, like he just enjoys opportunities, it seems, to try to like be how do I explain? Like, as soon as he sees an opportunity to bully people, he really likes to jump on it immediately. So I'm wondering how he's going to behave, because this man is like a priest, and so maybe he sees that as an opportunity to be aggressive towards him. I'm not sure, Just something like I'm interested in seeing once his cross-exam comes up. But let's see how he's answering questions for the prosecution and what kind of stuff we can learn from that.
And no uniform, or did everyone wear the same type of shirt or sweatshirt?
We didn't have, no, it was somewhat cold, so we had different, kind of, trying to stay generally speaking warm. We had some little, very small kind of lights that we're kind of carrying, very small, just kind of that sense of, not everyone had them, I didn't have one, but that sense of kind of bringing the light of Christ into Christmas. And
Thank you. I'm going to show you a variety of exhibits. First, I'm going to publish them or put them on the screen in front of you, and I'll direct your attention there. I'll ask you some questions about them, okay? So first I'm going to start with Exhibit 129. And let me know when you see that exhibit in front of you.
Checking my notes. I don't have all these exhibits.
Okay. And have you seen that picture before?
Yep, I have.
And do you know who that was taken by?
I believe it was taken by Jason Peckloff. He's at least the person that I saw the picture from, so it was probably circulated, but yeah.
Okay. Do you know when it was taken?
It was taken before the parade started with some of the group.
Okay. So this wasn't all the people in your group?
Not everyone, but a chunk of people.
Okay. Are you familiar with pretty much everyone within this picture?
Yep.
And there are names that are associated with certain people who we are considering injured parties in this matter. Do you see those names?
I do.
Do you see the arrows that are associated between the people and the name?
I do.
Can you briefly look at that and let me know if those names are correctly associated with the correct people?
Yeah, to the best of my ability. Juan Marquez is kind of in the back. That's a difficult one to say. It's probably him. On that angle, I couldn't say like 100%, but very, very probable.
I would ask the court to admit Exhibit 129 into evidence and publish it for the jury. Would ask the court to publish.
The objection is overruled. Exhibit 129 is received and permission to publish is granted.
His facial expressions, but knowing Darrell, that's going to be, he's going to try to work some kind of angle with that. I'm just going to say now, him saying like, I can't say for sure if that's, I think she said Juan Marquez. I didn't fully catch the name, but he's probably going to say like, oh, how can we trust, I don't know. You guys pretty much know like how his cross exams work at this point. He's going to say like, how can you say for sure that that is him if you're saying right now that you don't really know? Something along those lines. I don't know.
Can you briefly kind of go over the people who are named and their relationship with the other people in this picture? For example, I see some kids with the last name Perales Alvarez.
Exactly.
Can you kind of describe what their relationship is to one another?
Exactly. Yep. So Yamilet and Ashley, they're and then next to them unnamed is Yashleen. They're the daughters of Maria Alvarez Dominguez, as his name. They're usually say Alvarez Perales, actually.
Okay.
And then Jose Perales Alvarez.
Okay.
So those are connected there.
Okay.
And then Benjamin and Elliot Hallmark are siblings. Some of their other siblings are there too.
Okay.
Gregoria Romelia, she usually goes by Romy Perez, and Camila on the far left, that's mother and daughter.
Okay.
And then Juan in the back, his son David is up front. His head is kind of ducked to the side.
Okay.
So those would be the relationship connections.
How about Adair Lopez Revelar?
Objection, leading the witness.
Adair is...
Hold on, there's been an objection. I need to rule on it. The objection's noted. It's overruled. And you may answer.
So Adair is... his mother, Marisol, was also in the parade. She's not in the picture, though.
And how about Maria Alvarez Dominguez? I don't know if you addressed her yet.
Oh, yeah. Maria is she's the mother, and I forgot Eileen. I knew I was missing someone. Eileen is on the far right. So Eileen with the A, Yamilet, Ashley are and then Yashleen, who's doesn't have a name box by her. They're the kids of Maria and Jose, who's got just barely see the red hood.
And does this accurately reflect kind of the clothing that they were wearing while they were marching in the parade on November 21st of last year?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm now going to direct you to Exhibit 128 because I thought So can you identify the person depicted in that photograph, 128?
Yeah, so as it says, that'd be David.
Okay,
He'd be
so
one
that
of
is
the
correct.
younger kids.
He was kind of hidden a little bit in Exhibit 129, so I wanted to get a better picture of him. I'd ask that this be admitted into evidence. I'm sorry, was this taken on the day of the parade? Does it appear?
It would definitely appear. I'm not familiar with the picture, but it would definitely appear.
That appears to be the street that you guys
Exactly.
walked on
Yep,
and the clothing
definitely.
that he was
Objection,
wearing.
leave it.
Overruled. Father, do me a favor and just wait until the question is fully asked before you answer it. I know it can be very easy to anticipate, but the very nice lady in front of you is taking down a record of everything that's said, and it just makes her job a little bit more difficult if that happens. It's okay. So hopefully his answer was clear. If not, you can re-ask.
And I'm sorry, that accurately reflects what you believed you would have seen on November 21st of last year.
Yes.
I would ask that Exhibit 128 be admitted into evidence and published to the jury.
Objection.
Exhibit 128 is received and permission to publish is granted. The objection is overruled.
And I'm also going to then show you on the screen in front of you Exhibit
This guy's a
121.
character, man.
Let me know when that's showing in front of you.
It is.
Okay. You had indicated that in front of the group was a banner. Is this consistent with what you're seeing, or can you describe generally what you're seeing in Exhibit 121?
That would be our group, somewhat close to the beginning of the parade route. So that's the banner. That's Bob carrying it on one side, and Jason Pekloff, as is noted, on the other side, where there's St. Matthias in the background. St. Joseph is kind of right in front of that, towards the beginning of the route.
Okay. And there are other names that are associated with people. There's a box with their name with a red arrow going from the person to the name. Are all of those correctly diagrammed?
Why am I not taking notes in this?
Camila certainly is. Jason certainly is. Adair certainly is. Maria certainly is. Juan, I couldn't say definitively that that's him. And Jose Perales, I believe that's him, but I couldn't say definitively on that particular angle.
Okay. And with regard to Jason Pekloff, specifically, since we've identified the other people in this photograph through Exhibit 129, that is Jason Pekloff, and he's correctly named in this diagram?
Yeah, definitely.
Objection. Everybody was not positively identified.
I would note that the witness identified most with certainty, others without. So the jury should just keep that in mind at this point. I don't believe there's been an offer, though, or a request to receive it just yet. So I'll withhold any of that.
And Your Honor, I'm going to move Exhibit 121 into evidence, ask that it be published with the understanding.
His facial expressions right now, he hasn't even talked, like, he hasn't even gotten to his cross-exam yet, but for some reason, these in-between moments are getting to be, like, the most annoying right now. I don't know why. It's just seeing the facial expressions and then the little comments that he's making. It's really annoying the crap out of me.
Father,
what is he
Ruder
even
indicated
doing?
That Jose Perales Alvarez and Juan Marquez, it would be consistent, but he cannot say with 100% positivity that those are those two individuals.
Objection. It was not said with certainty whatsoever. The answer was he's not sure.
Exhibit 121 is received as noted by the state. Permission to publish is granted.
Sir, again, in looking at this exhibit, which is 121,
I know
other
his
than
eyes were
Jose
rolling like
Perales
crazy.
Alvarez and Juan Marquez, which you indicated you weren't positive about, the other people whose names are and arrows are on that picture, you can positively identify them?
100%.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 122. And again, is this consistent with a picture that was taken at the very beginning of the parade where the other picture was taken from?
That's correct.
Okay. And there are 2 names associated with 2 individuals on this picture. Can you positively identify that those individuals are the people in this picture?
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled.
Yeah, William Mitchell and Yamilat Perales, that would be 100% certain.
Thank you. I would ask the court to admit Exhibit 122 into evidence and publish it for the jury.
Exhibit 122 has received permission to publish. Granted.
He didn't object. At least I didn't hear.
And again, this accurately reflects
Surprised.
the identity of William Mitchell. If you can just circle William Mitchell in the photograph, it is a touch screen in front of you.
I should.
And Yamilat Perales Alvarez. Thank you. Moving on to Exhibit 123. Can you identify the individuals who are named in this exhibit?
Objection, the names are on there.
Question was whether he could identify the individuals who are named. So
That's a big arrow pointing to.
He just wants
Your-
to say something.
the objection's noted. It's overruled. You may answer the question.
So each of the people, Benjamin Hallmark, that arrow is correct. Maria Perez, that is correct. That is Luke Hallmark. Marisol, that would be Marisol, and then Gregoria. I would say 100%. I would attest to that picture.
And again, does this look to be taken in the same vicinity as the other pictures I've shown to you?
It definitely, it's towards the beginning of the route. Exactly. That's probably St. Matthias right there, and St. Joseph be right in front of us.
I'd ask the court to admit Exhibit 123 into evidence and to publish it for the jury.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. Exhibit 123 has received permission to publish is granted.
Again, sir, I'm just going to ask you to circle the people associated with the names as I call them out. Benjamin Hallmark, I think you had previously identified in Exhibit 129, but where is he? And if you can circle him. Okay. And Maria Perez.
Maria.
Luke Hallmark. Marisol Lopez Gutierrez. And Gregorio Romelia Perez, I think you said you know her as Romy.
Yeah, she also goes by Romy.
Thank you. I'm now going to show you State's Exhibit 124. And let me know when you, oh, you see it, I'm sorry. And does this again, looks like it's taken from the same angle as the prior exhibits. Do you see the name of Elliot Hallmark and Father Pat Heppy?
I do.
And are the arrows associated with the people that you know as Elliot Hallmark and Father Pat Heppy?
Objection, leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yep, 100%.
Thank
Those would be correct.
Thank you. I would ask the court to admit Exhibit 124 and publish it for the jury.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled. Exhibit 124 is received and permission to publish is granted.
And again, just to clarify for the jury, Elliot Hallmark, can you circle him? And Father Pat Heppy, can you circle him? Now, was he one of the other three pastors?
Exactly. Yep, Father Pat is the pastor emeritus in the Catholic community of Waukesha, so he's one of the 4 of us priests.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 125. Let me know when it's on your screen.
Yep.
And the final two of the people that we did not identify in that first picture, Exhibit 129, Lori Loken and Margaret Pekulis, and she goes by Peggy. Do you see them in this picture?
I do.
Are they correctly identified?
They are.
I'd ask and again, this photograph is taken at the same location as the others?
Yep.
Okay. I'd ask the court to admit Exhibit 125 and allow it to be published for the jury.
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled. Exhibit 125 is received and permission to publish is granted.
So far, the only thing that I'm hearing from this from the examination from the prosecution, I can't talk today. The only thing I'm hearing from the testimony that Darrell could probably use as an angle is that he's just gonna say, you know, some of the people you weren't able to positively identify, so how could you say that this is them for sure? Like, it seemed like you were unsure about things. And then, as we know, once he gets stuck on something, he really is stuck there. So he's probably just going to ask questions about it for a good, I don't know, 15 minutes. The same questions over and over, and then sovereign citizen stuff. So just getting us prepared for what's probably coming. I'm trying to get myself like mentally ready for that.
You can circle Lori Loken and Margaret Pakulis. Thank you. We can take this exhibit down. Do you recall as you were marching or walking in the parade, what group was in front of you?
The group in terms of we were the Catholic Memorial Group was the group in front of us. Behind us were the dancing grannies.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Please get off the screen.
At some point, was your attention drawn to something during the parade? Something unusual?
Yeah, so we were all of a sudden kind of heard a scream, and my experience was I turned to my left, and there was a red SUV just flying down the road. My next experience would be kind of hearing it, kind of striking people.
And I'm gonna just, because we have to put that on the record, that you put your fist to your palm of your hand, making a striking noise.
Yep, just kind of like a pounding sound, I guess you'd call it.
Overruled. The description may stand. Keep going.
Thank you.
Next question.
How many times did you hear that?
So for me,
the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
I heard 2 times.
Where were you when you were marching in this group? Were you on, as you're walking down Main Street, were you on the right-hand side of the group, which would be, I don't know why I can't get this right. The right side would be, I believe, the north. Or were you on the left-hand side of the street, which would be the south? Or were you in the middle?
I was more towards the right-hand side of the street.
And did you look back? And you said you looked back and saw the red SUV, correct?
Yeah, the way I would describe it is if the car would have hit me, it would have hit me. I kind of saw it as it was entering into our group.
And the 2 impacts that you heard, did you see those impacts?
My mind blocks that part out of it, so I couldn't say who was hit in those impacts. What I could say is that my next encounter was that there were 3 people from our group that I don't believe would have been the ones with impact that were lying more or less right in my immediate path.
So 2 right in front of you on the right-hand side of the street,
Yep.
as you testified?
On the right-hand side. Those were the 3 people that I was right by then.
And before that car went through, were those 3 people on the ground?
Definitely not.
Where did this impact take place? Do you know approximately where on the parade route?
Yeah, so it would have been past Prairie Insurance. There would have been, I believe it's Main Street Bar and Grill, and then there's kind of an unnamed bar, and then there's Planned Parenthood. So those would be it's kind of a Main Street, between Main Street and that kind of unnamed bars where it happened.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked and admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 15. It'll not only be, I'd ask that it be published as well.
Go ahead. Exhibit received.
Objection. How many times do you need to publish the same picture?
Your objection's noted, it's overruled.
Of course.
On this picture, there are different groups that appear to be on this picture. Can you describe, what does this appear to be a map of?
Yeah, that would be Main Street. That'd be our groups, all the groups of the parade.
And do you see your group on this map?
I do.
Would it be in the left-hand side of Exhibit 15?
Objection. Leading the witness.
Sustained, hold on. Sustained, please rephrase.
Where would you see, you said you saw your group, where do you see your group on this map?
On this map, our group is furthest to my left.
Can you circle it? And that would be, in that arrow, or I'm sorry, that star that you circled, then is attached to a list of names. Is that correct?
Objection. Leading the witness.
Sustained, please rephrase.
Yes. Do you see a list of names and an arrow on that map?
Objection. Leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
I do.
And where does that, do you recognize the names that are on that map?
Objection. Leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yep, I recognize all those names.
And it appears that approximately how many names are on that list?
Objection. Leading the witness.
Overruled.
19.
Didn't mean to test you. And were all those people, to your knowledge, injured as a result of being struck by or indirectly struck by the vehicle in the parade?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. We can take Exhibit 15 down. So when you looked around and saw the red SUV, did you hear the impacts first, or did you see the red SUV first?
I saw the red SUV just flying on the left side. I mean, flying is a relative word, but it was, going fast. It was going faster than anyone in their right mind would be driving in that scenario.
Could you estimate the speed?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
From being on that street in other occasions and kind of walking over there, the speed limit was 25. The car, in my estimation, was going faster than I would see a car driving in normal times down that street.
So in excess of 25 miles per hour?
Objection. Hearsay. Leading the witness.
Not hearsay. It's a clarification question. Your objection noted. It's overruled. You may answer.
I would say yes.
Now, when you said that you saw the red SUV coming to your left, I know you described your path of travel being on the right side of the road. So it's to the left of you. Would it be more towards the middle of your group or to the left of your group? Or on the left-hand side of your group?
I would say it was on my left.
Okay. So you're not sure how far away it was when it passed you?
No, it was on my left. I was not struck. It was on my left. It wasn't.
Did you see who was driving the vehicle?
I did not.
Well, y'all know that doesn't stop Darrell from asking questions about the driver for some reason. Even when you say you didn't see him, he still wants to ask questions about that, which is very strange.
Did the vehicle go past your group? Did it drive past your group?
I believe it did. I saw it just fly by, and my attention immediately was drawn towards the three people that were on the ground in my vicinity.
After the car went by, did you ever see the car stop?
I simply I saw the car fly by, and then the next thing I knew, there were three people in front of me on the ground, so my attention went right there.
Did you see anyone else on the ground after the car passed, other than the three people you initially saw?
There were other, so all around them, there were different kind of, as time played out, kind of pockets of people.
Can you describe who you saw after the car went through who appeared to be injured?
So the three people that were in my path were Father Patrick Heppy, and then Maria Perez, and William Bill Mitchell.
Did they all appear to be injured?
Yes.
And did you meet with those people after the parade? Did you talk to them or meet with them?
Yeah, so my attention was really drawn towards those three that were kind of right there. Father Pat was, he was kind of completely knocked out, and then he kind of came to, and he was kind of put on the side of the road. And then I more or less stayed by Maria Perez on the side. She was in agonizing pain. There were some other people that came. William Mitchell was also there, also with severe injuries and major pain. So I more or less stayed there. And then Father Pat and I, we, being priests, we live in the same, we call it the rectory, or the house. So when he went into the hospital, I joined him to go. And then so my next immediate experience was going to the hospital and then encountering more of the people that were in our group who were already at the hospital.
So the three people you had direct contact with would have been Maria Perez, William Mitchell, or Bill Mitchell.
He's literally doing this intimidation stare thing. Like, this is a perfect example of it. The whole time the pastor is talking, he's staring and making all these facial expressions with his eyebrows like, is that true? What are you doing, man?
And
This dude is so cartoonish with the way he looks.
I believe that's
It's like a
what
Looney
it
Tunes
was.
character.
Correct. It's overruled.
And you went to which hospital?
So Father Pat was taken by a squad to Waukesha Memorial, so I joined them in going to that hospital.
Did you see any of the people that you had observed on that list on Exhibit 15 at Waukesha Memorial Hospital?
Yes, I did.
What observations did you make there of the people you saw?
Yep, so immediately I saw Eileen Perales, who was sitting off to the side with some facial issues and some other injuries. So Father Pat was he was placed in a room, and I kind of was helping Eileen a little bit. And then there was also Peggy Pachulis, was also in the waiting room already when I got there.
Did she have any observable injuries?
She had, like her ankle was splinted already. She was waiting. And then shortly after that, then Benjamin and Elliot Hallmark were also in the general waiting room. And I ended up also seeing them. And then my next experience would be with the different situations in families, it became apparent that unfortunately some families were split apart in different injuries. And so I was with there was CAT scans that needed to be done on some of the children. So there were 4 beds. And I was, especially with that, Benjamin and Elliot Hallmark, their parents were out. And then it also turned out that Eileen and Ashley Perales also then were waiting CAT scans. So that would have been my next encounter.
What injuries did you observe on those individuals?
So at the time, I mean, Ashley had some, you call it facial lacerations and major injuries there.
And I think you already testified about Eileen. How about Elliot and Benjamin Hallmark?
Yeah, so they were both in, at the time they were getting checked out for brain situations. It was clear Benjamin had a major fracture in his leg, and also a major golf ball coming out of by his eyes. And Elliot also then had some injuries.
And I'm just going to go through the remainder. If you saw them, or either that night or in the following days, let me know. And if you know that they were injured. Maria Alvarez Dominguez.
Objection. It's hearsay.
It's not hearsay. It's asking about his knowledge, not what he heard. So you may answer the question.
Maria was injured. I don't know the full scope of her injuries.
Okay. And how about Gregorio Romelia Perez?
She was very, very, very severely injured. Major issues.
Could you observe what those injuries were?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Pelvis fractures, and she was in rehab for about 4 months with still walking with a cane.
She still is walking with a cane?
That's correct.
Lori Loken?
Lori sustained some major heart issues, so she had a major procedure on her heart.
Marisol Lopez Gutierrez?
I don't know the full extent. Marisol was impacted. She suffered I believe, a fracture, wrist fracture. Some other major soreness. She's healing.
Adair Lopez Gutierrez?
Adair was the car ran over him. He didn't suffer any major physical injuries, but was impacted.
Juan Marquez?
Juan suffered a major leg fracture, has had a couple surgeries.
David Marquez?
David was struck, took on some bruising, but no major injuries.
Jason Peckloff?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Jason suffered a severe concussion and some ankle injuries, an ankle injury.
Yamilet Perales Alvarez?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. Go ahead, you may answer.
Yamilet was, came very close to losing her. Major head trauma. Was severely hurt.
Jose Perales Alvarez?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled.
Jose also was very severely hurt with leg injuries. He's had about 10 surgeries at this point. Still walking with a crutch.
And Camila Perez Gonzalez?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled.
Camilla had an orthopedic injury. He's had a couple surgeries.
Looking further. Thank you, Father.
Any cross-examination?
Are y'all ready for this cross-exam? I should just let it. I don't know why I do this. I pause right before the cross-exam. Just because you never know how crazy his questions are going to be. But look, let's go ahead and let Darrell get these crazy questions off. I'm glad that he clarified. I did want to say I'm glad that he clarified like the flying statement he made when he said the car is flying, because that's something I didn't even think about. Darrell will say, well, what did you mean by flying? Because cars don't fly. He'll seriously say something crazy like that. He's not above that. But let's go ahead and get the cross-exam.
Any questions for this witness, sir?
I do.
Please proceed.
You see.
Under 90611. Please.
I don't have too many questions for you, Father. Do you recall when you knew for sure that you would be testifying in this matter?
I got an official word on October 1st to plan to be here, I believe, on last Wednesday.
And to the best of your knowledge, do you have any reason why you would be testifying on behalf of an injured party if you are not an injured party? Grounds.
I should have known. So him saying that I don't have too many questions for you, that basically means he's scrapping all the other questions that like his attorney, his public defenders put together. He's like, I don't need that. He's just gonna go straight for sovereign citizen. So hopefully we get a 90611 and it just ends. We'll see.
Overruled. You may answer. If he knows.
My thought would be that as the pastor, I would have a more wide-ranging kind of knowledge of different people's situations as a pastor, where some people might That's what I would assume. But
And plus, he has no control over that. They asked him to come there. He didn't tell them to bring me here.
You testified to observing quite a few injuries. How can you assess the injuries just by looking at the people?
Can you clarify what you mean by that? Like, what are you getting at?
For example, if I was to see someone injured laying on the ground, I could essentially say, "Oh, it looks like this," but how can I be certain that that's what it is?
He never said.
So my question is, being that you observed a lot of injuries, how are you able to assess what they were just by looking?
Well, the question mischaracterizes his testimony, so I'm going to ask that you rephrase.
How did you know the injuries just by looking?
It still mischaracterizes his testimony. That's not what he said. He was asked about whether he was aware.
Yeah, that he observed injuries. So how could he know
He observed some, so you need to be specific as what point in
the
time.
injuries that you saw at the hospital? How were you able to say for sure what those injuries were just by observation?
Yeah, so some of it is seeing people at the hospital, and then part of it then is, so there's the immediate seeing people in the hospital, and then there's the later times of seeing people in the hospital or seeing people in other contexts.
So would it be fair to say that you were told those injuries either by medical professionals or by the people?
Exactly. So if people would say, "This is my injury," I would believe them. If they'd be in the hospital, if I see people with crutches, wheelchairs, then I would say that's probably accurate.
But you didn't know for sure yourself until you were told.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not the one diagnosing an injury. I can observe what they say, I can observe what I see, and then I see people with crutches, wheelchairs,
That's what
and
I
I'm
was
like,
getting at.
there's probably truth there.
He said he saw someone with facial lacerations and stuff like that in the waiting room. How is that him? How can he say, like, but how do you know for sure about that? That's an observation that he said. Like, he never once said, this is exactly what injury they had when I saw them. They simply asked him what he observed at the time when he arrived at the hospital to see them. So that's why I busted out laughing right then, because what he asked, it makes no sense. And then seeing this moment of confusion where it's like I wish they had cameras on the prosecution, the witness table, or the witness seat here, and Darrell, so we could just get a collective view of like what is this? What is this dude talking about? It makes no sense.
Because you testified to seeing those some of those people after the incident. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Do you know if any of the people you saw after the incident filed any claims in the matter?
Could you clarify by what you mean by claims?
He has no idea. He was hoping you wouldn't ask
to
this.
be an injured party in the matter, or did they file for any medical bill support or anything of that nature? To your knowledge, do you recall any of that?
We certainly told as many people as possible to get involved in the Waukesha parade support and other means of help. I can't speak specifically for each person what they did or did not do.
Can you explain to the jury what you mean by the support that you are referring to? Was that like a group formed, or was that sort of like an event of a GoFundMe account or something like that? Can you give some clarity on that?
Yeah, there was the Waukesha Parade Fund that was, I think, an international type of thing. There was, our parish had a fund. There were GoFundMes. There were any number of different things. There were different encounters to allow people to come together and talk about what had happened and seek start of healing from the emotional part of it.
And I'm not sure if I mentioned this, there are links to donate to the community of Waukesha, pinned at the top of the comment section. I think I said it a second ago, but just in case I didn't, I just want to go ahead and reiterate that those are pinned at the top.
And by international, that would be assuming worldwide. That'd be fair to say?
Yes.
So it would be fair to say that there were financial interests attached to this incident.
Objection is how it relates to this witness's
That makes it
testimony.
sound so weird.
Sustained.
I should try to answer the question.
No, I sustained it. You don't have to answer
Okay.
that.
Right.
You can rephrase, but as it relates to how it was asked in this witness, I'm sustaining it.
Well, it was actually because he referred to some GoFundMe's being set up and anything. So my question was, being that it was a wide-ranging scope by him saying international.
What's your question? I sustained the objection.
Was there any financial interests attached to this incident?
And I'm going to object for the same reasons before.
Grounds.
It's vague, unclear, overly broad. Sustained as to the form of the question.
Any idea how much money was raised for
How could you possibly know that?
I guess I would say GoFundMe's, groups, support?
Objection as it relates to this witness's
Grounds.
testimony.
I'll allow it a little bit of leeway as it potentially could relate to bias, not of this witness. He made no claim, but go ahead if he knows. Subject to you following it up with other, witnesses later on.
I know, so the Catholic community of Waukesha had an opportunity because people wanted to give, and so there was $73,000 that came into the fund that I'm aware of, the Catholic community of Waukesha, that we dispersed in different ways. There's still, I think, $3,000 left. That's for kind of community healing events. What the end of what GoFundMe's reached, what the Waukesha Foundation Fund reached, I don't know. But I know the Catholic community of Waukesha was 73,000. Yeah, the specific, I couldn't say 73 what, but 73,000, I think.
That's a lot.
And did that go straight towards the victims to help them in any way?
So an example would be, there are many people that could not work because of being hurt, or they had situations where a loved one was severely hurt and they had to be at home or going to the hospitals, nursing homes, and taking care of them. So there was, and I have no idea the ins and outs of payment of hospital bills and things like that, but I know people were, they could not go to work because of some of these scenarios.
What does Darrell think? This is so crazy. He thinks that he ran through a parade with his SUV, but people for some reason need to be paid off, and all this I don't know, some kind of secret society is band together or something to get him locked up for this. I don't know if he thinks this is just something where nothing should happen to him for what he did, so it requires this intricate group to get him put behind bars. It's crazy how his mind works. to where he thinks people need to be paid off just to testify against him for hurting them, hurting their community, and the people that they love. Like, it's just the weirdest mindset. It's very strange.
You stated you didn't see the vehicle approaching at the time when it got to where you were. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct. It was very close to me when I saw it.
About how close to you did the vehicle come?
The vehicle was on my left side. I saw it probably, very close to when it was on me, I would say, to my left.
So you were on the right side of the street at that point?
It was on the right side of the road.
So it'd be fair to say it was on the opposite side of the road from you?
It was on my left. Where on the left? If you show me a picture of the road, like point to where it was on my left, I could not say that it was on my left.
Did it come pretty close to you at any time when it was passing you?
The car did not hit me. It was on my left.
You referred to it as a car, as you just said. Was it a car? Was it an SUV? What was the vehicle?
I would describe it as an SUV, to be specific.
Any reason why you would say car?
Because everybody says car.
Overruled. He may answer.
For me, people that know me, I'm not a car person, so car is a wide-ranging descriptor to me.
Right. Everyone speaks in generalities when it comes to a vehicle. Like, I've never heard anybody get super specific when they talk about a vehicle that's going down the road. Like, that's... But anyway, we know the game he's getting at.
Bus a car, though, right?
Some people do. I'm going to be honest.
Sustained. You don't need to answer that.
Some people do. In all seriousness, some people actually do.
When asked earlier, when you were asked about if you saw anyone else on the ground or something to that effect, you said as time went on, you had observed someone else laying on the ground. Can you explain what you mean by as time went on? Was that a significant time that passed, or a very short time that passed at that point? Do you recall?
My testimony is there were 3 people that were right in front of me, and I really spent time. Father Pat then was taken to the side as he waited for a squad to come. I really stayed with Maria because there weren't a lot of people around there first, so I really kind of focused on staying with her. From looking up and waiting, there'd be officers or different medical personnel, whether they were, I can't say what type of personnel there were. People would come and check and kind of evaluate, but I could see other kind of pockets of people.
Did you observe the other pockets of people that weren't with your group being struck at any point in time?
The only experience that I saw was our particular group. At the time of the incident, I had no idea what had taken place behind us.
And would it be fair to say you had no idea what had taken place in front of your group?
As I stated, I only saw what I saw.
At any time when the vehicle was passing you, were you able to see into the vehicle?
The vehicle was going very fast. So I would not have had a picture of who was driving the vehicle.
But you can't estimate a good speed that the vehicle may have been traveling.
My estimation was the vehicle was traveling faster than I would usually see a car traveling down Main Street. So over 25 miles an hour.
So would that be that you said traveling faster than you would see a car traveling down Main Street? Would that be in terms of if there was a parade actively going on, or even without any traffic on Main Street?
If I was at Main Street right now, watching cars go past, if I was just on the sidewalk, I would say that the car on the parade was traveling faster than those cars would be traveling.
I'm saying in terms of even if there was no parade, if it was just a regular,
He literally just said it.
Day.
That's what I'm saying. On a normal day, the car was traveling, in my estimation, faster than you would see a car traveling on a normal day.
And you weren't able to get any description of the driver of the vehicle?
Not at all, no.
License plate?
Could you at any point tell if there was more than one person in the vehicle?
I would not have been able to, no.
Do you recall being interviewed by any law enforcement at that time?
I was at the hospital, as I indicated before, that night, and there was a law enforcement person that kind of ducked into one of the rooms and asked, a couple questions, what I would have seen, or.
So very brief, not extensive, long, extensive type interview, but very brief, just a few questions.
In the hospital that evening, yes, there was a law enforcement that was a brief interview.
Did you give any, or were you interviewed by any law enforcement after that night?
I was not interviewed until getting a subpoena about this particular case.
Do you recall when you received that subpoena?
I can't say a specific date. I can say, after that first one, October 1st was when I got the official, to report, to testify to the case. I can't remember what date it was before that.
Were you in contact with any law enforcement about this incident leading up to the October 1st subpoena that you received?
Not before I talked to the DA that first time.
And do you recall what DA that was?
It was Susan and.
Excuse me.
Susan.
May the record reflect that there was a right hand gesture towards the prosecution table.
I believe the witness identified our District Attorney Susan Opper as the Susan. The record can reflect that.
And was that October 1st time the only conversation you had with Attorney Opper?
October 1st was when I received the notification that I was to report to court. I spoke with Susan, sometime in the month before. We spoke once.
But in the month before the October 1st subpoena?
So October 1st is when I formally got the subpoena that I was to come in. It would have been sometime in September where I was, notified to come in and talk to the DA. So I talked to the DA once.
And at that time in September, you weren't yet subpoenaed?
I was, how do I say this? This would be a point of clarification in the sense of I believe that I was subpoenaed to come in and talk to the DA. I'm not sure if that's a subpoena or that's what the correct wording is. I was told to come in and and talk to the district. I'm not sure if that's a subpoena, but I believe it would be more than come in if you want to. I believe it was kind of like you need to come in, not if you want, you can, if not, don't. I'm not sure what the terminology for that is, but that's how I would take it. If that's a subpoena.
No, that's not a subpoena. The subpoena is when you actually get the subpoena paperwork by mail, or I don't.
Mr. Brooks, you need to ask a question.
Can I get to it, Your Honor?
No, because you're trying to define
not
something, which
asking
would
a
be
question.
testifying, which you cannot do at this time. So the jury will disregard his last comment, but go ahead and ask a question of this witness.
You is something else. Wow.
What did he just say? Did he just say, you are something else? He is so upset that a woman is telling him what he can and can't do. I hope that we have another moment like this. This man's spirit is breaking. I'm happy to
Mr.
hear
Brooks, that was inappropriate.
it. That was very inappropriate. The clown show
Do you have
continues.
any other questions
Yes,
for this
I do.
witness?
Yes,
Please
I
ask
do.
them.
During your
He's in his feelings now.
conversations with Attorney Opper in September and October 1st, when you received the subpoena, at that time, were you provided the complaint in this issue?
What do you mean by complaint?
The complaint would be a reference to the charges in this matter. Paperwork that would state the charges.
Objection, Meg.
Grounds.
Oh, Rose, he may answer if he's able.
I mean, to me, seeing what happened and seeing everyone that was hurt,
No.
to me it was very obvious what this was about.
Did you see at any time any paperwork related to the charges in this incident?
So there'd been the subpoena sheet that would have had your name and any number of different.
What do you mean my name?
He's gonna
What
freak
are you
out. Here we
referring
go.
to?
Here we go. What do you
I believe it would
mean?
have said Darrell Brooks on it.
Are you aware that I don't identify by that name?
Objection, argument.
How would he know or care? None of us care. We live in the real world.
So is that what your subpoena said? Was that the language of your subpoena? The logistics?
We've been down this road under 906.11, Mr. Brooks. You're not, I need you to ask a relevant question
Yes.
to this witness.
Look,
That
he's
was
gonna
relevant. You
start.
said what was on the
No,
subpoena.
you've talked at length about the subpoena, so under 906.11, move on to a new topic, please.
So it's safe to say that today he's going to get super angry because that's the second time the judge has shut down what he wants to do. And as we know, whenever he is challenged, one too many times, the rest of the day he's going to try to make it as difficult as possible. So now he just got challenged twice in his mind. So now he's going to try to be as childish as he possibly can. He's probably going to end the cross exam now, but let's see.
Are you aware of who the plaintiff is in this matter?
Objection, relevance.
Grounds.
Overruled, he may answer.
I believe that you would be, or excuse me, you're the defendant.
I would be the plaintiff?
Excuse me, at my mind, you're the defendant, I believe. The plaintiff would be.
Oh my gosh, this is actually like getting on my nerves now. This is annoying the
all
crap out of
those
me right now.
who were hurt under the title of the state of Wisconsin. That's how I would identify it.
That's how you identify it. So Do you know if anybody who was hurt that identified as the plaintiff?
Objection, relevance.
Grounds.
This is actually annoying me right now. Him like trying to rattle a pastor. Like, do you see he's trying to like apply pressure to him? He's leaning forward like he can apply some kind of pressure. You can't do anything, bro. You're in chains. You are locked up right now.
He's really not sure what the plaintiff is. He kind of guessed. He gave an assumption.
Sustained.
He can call you Darrell Brooks as
Foundation.
many times as he would like
Answer
to.
the question though.
Sustained. Next question.
So to the best of your knowledge, the plaintiff would be the representative of the people.
Objection is relevance.
Sustained. You're now asking him to make a legal conclusion, which I will not have him do. It's also not relevant.
Do you know of any injured party who claims to be the plaintiff in this matter?
Objection, relevance.
Grounds.
Sustained. Mr. Brooks, under 90611, please move on to a new topic.
We might get him. She might end it here. Hopefully. I thought this was going to be a brief. He said he didn't have too many questions. I guess it turned out
Are
he
you
wanted
aware
to ask.
that only an injured party could be the plaintiff in this
All right, let's shut it down.
incident?
Objection,
Grounds.
relevance.
Sustained also misstates the law. You don't have to answer that. Mr. Brooks, new topic, or under 90611, I will close the cross-examination.
He doesn't have any more questions. This is just a clown show right now.
How does that mischaracterize the law? An injured party
Right,
has to make the
Under
plaintiff.
90611, you haven't asked a question. I will give you one more opportunity. Don't question me. Please ask a question of this witness. The jury will disregard his statement as it mischaracterizes the law, and he is not testifying. He's asking questions at this time.
Are
Give
you
us
aware
one
that
more,
the state of
Darrell.
Wisconsin is an entity and cannot claim to be an
There it
injured
is.
party in this matter?
Objection.
Grounds.
Sustained. All right, your cross-exam is now closed under 90611. Does the state have any redirect for this
Briefly.
witness? Go ahead.
Sir, prior to the red SUV coming through your group, did you ever hear a horn honking?
Objection.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
Objection. Hearsay.
It's not hearsay.
I personally didn't, but
That's fine. Now I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 15 again and ask that that be published to the jury. This has already been admitted into evidence.
Go ahead.
Objection. What was the answer to the last question?
The record speaks for itself. Next, the witness can consider the annotations.
And again, you previously identified the individuals in the Catholic Communities of Waukesha box. In looking at that box again, were all those people on the road as part of the Catholic Communities of
Man, look at all
Waukesha
the members that
when
got hit.
the red SUV went through?
Objection. Leading the witness.
Overruled. You may answer, sir.
definitely, 100%.
And we can take that exhibit off the screen. One final question. When you spoke with District Attorney Susan Opper in your meeting that you testified to, did she ever tell you what to say today?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled. You questioned his credibility. You questioned his talking to the state. He may answer the question.
The only
Go
reason
ahead.
why I'm objecting, Your Honor, is because
Your objection's noted.
Attorney Opper is not asking the question, so how would Attorney Basie know what
Mr.
Attorney Opper
Brooks,
said?
I'm not going to explain the legal procedures.
Please kick him out.
Go ahead, ask the question. You may answer when she does. Do you recall the question?
Yeah, I do. She did not.
Okay.
No.
Did she tell you to tell the truth today?
Objection. Relevancy.
Sustained as to the form of the question.
Everything that you testified today, is it truthful?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
Nothing further, thank you.
All right, Nathan, you may step down.
Man, I thought the last cross-exam was a struggle. This is top tier Fisher Price struggle
We'd like
cross-examinations
to
right now.
get through one more
This is
witness,
ridiculous.
but I want to take a short comfort break for everyone, so I'll rise for the jury. Thank you.
So we're probably going to hear all his complaints now. As soon as the jury leaves, he's going to give us all of his woe is me speech.
Mr. Brooks, not now.
Not allowed to.
Not now.
His little
The
feelings
jury
are hurt,
is in
so.
this courtroom, and you will show respect for them and for this court.
Respect for them would be
Mr. Brooks,
telling them the truth.
stop. I'm putting you on notice that you are on the verge of this court creating a curative instruction about your frivolous arguments. I will not have you claim legitimacy for what are debunked, frivolous, sovereign arguments.
Then
That is why
prove it.
your questions
Prove it.
are being
Prove that it's
objected
frivolous.
to,
Prove
and
that
why
it's frivolous. Prove it.
all the cases that we've already referenced, sir. We are in recess. We'll be back in
prove
5
it.
minutes. Thank you, everyone.
I don't agree to a estoppel. Can you prove?
He doesn't consent to estoppel. We can't stop everyone.